Well, at magnitude 1, you wouldn't notice a thing. At 3, you might slosh your coffee if you're drinking. At 5, things can start to shake off shelves, and it definitely gets your heart racing. But at 7.5, that's when the ground itself rips, buildings sway, and whole streets can split. And now, scientists warn a fault we thought wasn't active anymore could unleash something that strong under a small sleepy town in Canada. Now, if you trace your finger across a map of northwestern Canada, you'll find Dawson City in the Yukon. It looks like a nice place to escape from civilization. After all, it only has about 1,600 residents. It's quiet, remote, and famous for its gold rush past. In the late 1890s, Dawson City ballooned into a boomtown almost overnight as prospectors chased gold. Today, the rush is long gone, but the town still looks the part. Wooden boardwalks and saloon-style facades give it the feel of a set straight out of a Western movie. Oh, and beneath all of that is a fracture in the earth itself. Dawson City is located on top of what's known as the Tintina Fault. It's a massive crack in the Earth's crust that stretches for hundreds of miles toward Alaska. Until recently, scientists believed that this zone had been inactive for over 40 million years. But newer studies tell a different story. Just a quick reminder, faults are giant cracks when two slabs of Earth's crust meet. They're always trying to slide past each other, but their jagged edges catch and lock. Pressure builds for decades, continuously bending and straining the rock. Then, suddenly, the locked zone breaks, and the slabs slip into a new position in just seconds. That abrupt lurch releases all the stored energy, sending seismic waves racing outward. The ground-shaking consequence is called an earthquake. Scientists say the ground on each side of Tintina has been trying to slide past itself for ages, but it's stuck. And now, that stuck zone has built up around 20 feet of strain. That's how far the land would shift sideways if it all gave at once. That's not just a small crack. That's straight up something from a disaster movie. If all that built-up tension snaps in one go, the result could be a magnitude 7.5 earthquake. How strong is that? Well, pretty strong. So, what happens during a big quake? The shaking can last up to 30 seconds or more, which is an eternity when the walls are swaying and the floor feels like it's rolling under your feet. If you're near the fault, things can get really scary. The ground doesn't just shake, it could take a big step sideways. This can lead to some renovations. Roads might get a new zigzag pattern, and unreinforced buildings could decide to do the twist. And if it happens in a Canadian winter, let's just say it could turn a simple power outage into a survival horror adventure. Being on soft soil is like sitting on wobbly jelly. It amplifies the shaking. Solid rock is a bit more stable. However, it's still dangerous. For example, in Mexico in 2003, a 7.5 quake damaged over 43,000 homes, buckled roads, and cut power for miles. In Sulawesi in 2018, the same magnitude not only leveled buildings, but triggered a tsunami and liquefaction. The whole neighborhood was swallowed as the ground turned to quicksand. Now here's something interesting. Most people don't think of Canada as an earthquake country, but it actually gets around 5,000 quakes a year. However, they're so small that you'd never feel them. The real hot spot is the West Coast, near British Columbia. That's where you hear people whisper about the infamous Big One. It refers to a future megathrust earthquake along the Cascadia subduction zone, a massive fault that runs for 600 miles just offshore. Unlike Tintina's sideways slip, Cascadia works by one tectonic plate shoving under another. For centuries, the North American plate has been bent upward like a spring as the Juan de Fuca plate has been diving below. When it finally snaps, that's a magnitude 9.0, more than 30 times stronger than a 7.5. We know it can happen because it already has. The last big one struck in 1700. It was so powerful, it didn't just shake the Pacific Northwest. It launched a tsunami across the ocean that smacked Japan, where villagers recorded an orphan wave with no local quake to explain it. Only later did scientists connect the dots. Now this brings us to the fact that despite all this, the size of the fault, the quiet buildup of strain, and the potential for a magnitude 7.5 earthquake, the Titina Fault isn't even listed on Canada's official seismic hazard map, at least for now. That means no warnings, no color-coded danger zones. And when a fault isn't on the map, nobody designs a building for it. There's no proper preparation. You don't build reinforced structures or have seismic codes, especially when people don't expect that the ground could split open. Now, to be honest, that's not someone's mistake. The fault just didn't show any signs of being active recently. And this part of Canada is really big, quiet, and doesn't have a lot of monitoring. Not until too long ago, people had thought of the Titina as just a geological oddity, something cool for looking at the past, but not really relevant for the future. For years, the Titina Fault flew under the radar, but that changed when researchers brought high-tech gear. They uncovered subtle but clear land shifts near Dawson City. They looked like scars on the landscape and pointed to past earthquakes, including one that pushed the land nearly 3,000 feet over millions of years. Now, interestingly, newer glacial features showed no signs of disruption, which means the last major quake probably happened right before the end of the last ice age. In geologic terms, that's pretty recent. When scientists lined up those land shifts with the ages of glaciers, the picture was clear. The Titina Fault isn't retired, it's just been on a really long coffee break, and now it's itching to clock back in. That's why researchers want it officially on Canada's seismic hazard map. Dawson City deserves more than a shrug emoji when the ground decides to stretch. The experts are basically playing detective with dirt. They're scanning forests and rivers for faint scars that past earthquakes tried to hide. They're digging trenches like archaeologists with a taste for chaos, flipping through the Earth's diary one muddy page at a time. Every crack, wrinkle, and layer adds to the story of when Titina last threw a tantrum and how loud the next one could be. It's pretty cool that satellites can literally track if one side of a valley is slowly creeping ahead of the other, like tectonic snail racing. The goal is to find out how often this fault snapped in the past, how much stress it's still holding on to today, and whether it's going to go off quietly or all at once. Finally, just because you know that plates are pushing against each other underneath, you still can't put a date on it. Long stretches of silence might mean the rocks are getting ready for something huge, or they could just be releasing stress in tiny ways that go unnoticed. Scientists can model possibilities, but no one has a countdown clock for the next rupture. The smartest mindset isn't prediction, it's preparation. You brace for the plausible, not the precise, because the Earth's schedule doesn't come with reminders. It turns out the Earth's crust is always fidgeting. It's just that our maps are a little behind on the gossip. A fault everyone thought was harmless might actually be sitting on a magnitude 7.5 size secret. But don't worry, this isn't a cue to panic. It's a cue to get smart. Better data, sturdier buildings, and a few just-in-case habits. When the ground finally decides to settle its debt, what really matters isn't whether Dawson City feels the shake. It's whether everyone's prepared enough to turn a potential disaster into just a real wild story to tell later. Hey, have you ever been in an earthquake? I have. Tell me your story in the comments.
Imagine standing in a quiet northern town, surrounded by mountains and forests, when the ground beneath your feet suddenly shifts with the force of a freight train. That's not a movie scene. It's a very real possibility for the people living in Dawson City, Canada. Hidden beneath the tranquil Yukon landscape lies a geological giant, the Titina Fault. For more than 12,000 years, it has been silent, but new research suggests it might be ready to wake up in a spectacular and dangerous way. Stretching over 1,000 kilometers from the Yukon into Alaska, the Titina Fault is like a massive crack in Earth's crust, a boundary where colossal slabs of rock slowly grind past each other. On the surface, it looks harmless, just rugged terrain, rivers, and forests. But deep underground, strain is quietly building, like a spring being wound tighter and tighter. Theron Findlay, a geologist from the University of Victoria, and his team decided to take a closer look at a section of this fault near Dawson City. This wasn't just a casual inspection. They used cutting-edge tools like high-resolution satellite images, aerial surveys, and LiDAR, a laser-based scanning method that can reveal subtle changes in the ground's shape. What they found was unsettling. In one location, the ground was visibly displaced by an astonishing 1,000 meters, evidence of a long series of powerful earthquakes millions of years ago. In another area, they spotted a smaller but still significant offset of about 75 meters, likely caused by more recent quakes, roughly 132,000 years ago. Since then, nothing major. At least, nothing visible. And that's exactly the problem. When a fault line hasn't released energy for thousands of years, it doesn't mean it's safe. Quite the opposite. It could mean that massive pressure has been silently accumulating. Based on their calculations, the Tintina Fault has been moving at a slow creep of up to 0.8 millimeters per year. Over 12,000 years, that adds up to a staggering 6 meters of potential movement waiting to be unleashed. If that strain were to suddenly break free, the resulting earthquake could be bigger than magnitude 7.5. For context, that's in the same league as some of the most destructive quakes in history, like the 1976 Tangshan earthquake in China, or the 2010 Haiti disaster. While the Yukon isn't densely populated, the impact could still be devastating, damaging highways, collapsed buildings, landslides cutting off communities, and potentially loss of life. The scientists can't say when it will happen. Earthquakes don't work on a schedule, and predicting the exact moment of rupture is one of geology's greatest challenges. What they do know is that the Tintina Fault is in what's called a late stage of its seismic cycle, a point where the risk of a major quake is higher. For the people of Dawson City and surrounding areas, this means living with a quiet but ever-present threat. Emergency planners might advise residents to have evacuation routes, survival kits, and backup communication plans. But in the end, this is a reminder of a simple truth. Earth is never truly still. Even in the most peaceful landscapes, immense forces are always at work, reshaping the planet in ways we can't always see, until the day they reveal themselves with a violent jolt. Yet, the story of the Tintina Fault is more than a warning. It's a glimpse into how Earth stores and releases its pent-up energy. Each millimeter of annual movement is like another twist of a key in a lock. At some point, the lock will turn, and when it does, the release will be sudden and powerful. LiDAR images reveal ancient scars across the land, subtle to the untrained eye, but obvious to scientists. These are the footprints of past disasters, frozen in the ground like a history book carved by nature. Findlay and his colleagues believe the region's seismic silence has lulled people into a false sense of security. A place can be both beautiful and dangerous, and the Yukon is a perfect example. Visitors come for the sweeping vistas and endless wilderness, rarely realizing that deep beneath their hiking trails and scenic roads, forces are shifting that could change the landscape overnight. This hidden drama plays out all over the world. Fault lines in California, Turkey, Japan, and beyond all share one trait. They eventually break. The question is never if, but when. The Tintina Fault just happens to be one of the quieter players, which in geological terms can be far more ominous than the noisy ones. And so, the clock ticks, silently, in the frozen north, counting down to a moment no one can see coming. Canada is massive, but almost everyone lives in the east or the west. And right in the middle, there is this huge stretch of land where hardly anyone calls home, Northern Ontario. So why does this place almost feel off-limits? Northern Ontario is part of, well, Ontario. It's a super busy province, home to major cities like Toronto and Ottawa. About 1/3 of all Canadians live there, but most of them are down in the southern part of the province, not up north. But that doesn't really add up when you think about it because the northern part is way, way bigger. We're talking about a region that is more than 300,000 square miles, pretty much the same size as the whole country of Turkey. Northern Ontario takes up about 87% of the entire province, but strangely, only about 6% of Ontario's population lives in this area. But before you start dreaming about moving there for some peace and quiet, hold on. There are 4 big reasons people choose not to, and honestly, you'll probably agree. Reason number 1, the land itself. Look up the region on Google Earth, and all you will see is a huge stretch of empty space. Nothing special at first glance, but zoom in, and that's when things start getting complicated. Northern Ontario is famous for its rugged, remote landscapes, full of endless forests and lakes. It's beautiful to look at or snap a photo of, but living there is a whole different story. The geography makes the area tough to get around and makes it hard to build things like transportation routes and railways. And since it's so difficult to put decent roads up there, the whole region stays pretty isolated. That takes us to reason number 2, remoteness. You might think that, being in the center of the country, it could serve as a great link between the eastern and western parts of Canada. But in reality, that's not how it works, and the region is very far from Canada's major cities. Take Greater Sudbury, the largest city in Northern Ontario, with around 160,000 people. The closest major city is Toronto, which is about 230 miles away. So yeah, that's roughly a 4-hour drive just to get there. If you're planning a holiday weekend in a big, dynamic city, a 4-hour drive sounds like a fun road trip. But if you need to go for a dental appointment or sort out paperwork, that distance suddenly feels endless, not to mention the cost. Unfortunately, that's how life is for many people up there. Residents of Northern Ontario don't have easy access to opportunities or services. With so few people scattered across such a huge area, the region doesn't have enough facilities, infrastructure, or easy access to essential services like healthcare and education. People there sometimes have to deal with poor or even non-existent infrastructure, like missing roads, airports, hospitals, and schools. Without those things, settling down is really tough. And in rural areas, it's even worse, because the lack of services can seriously hurt their quality of life. Psychologically speaking, that's not great either. People can end up feeling isolated and lonely, and the freezing weather doesn't help. Which brings us to reason number 3 why most people don't live in Northern Ontario: the harsh climate. If you're not a fan of cold weather, you should definitely leave this region off your travel bucket list. Winters up there can be long and brutal, with temperatures sometimes dropping as low as 40 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. Have you ever tried shoveling snow when it's this cold? Yeah, it's not exactly fun. That kind of harsh weather doesn't just mess up your weekend plans or your daily jog. It also makes transportation a huge challenge. The result is that many residents end up isolated from essential services and job opportunities. And it's also really hard to build infrastructure, grow industries, or run businesses because of that harsh climate. Take farming, for example. Compared to Southern Ontario, the northern region has a shorter growing season and much colder weather. Although crops like oats, potatoes, and green beans can handle the cold, the climate usually limits the variety of things that can be grown. That's why most farms are concentrated in the southern part of the province, and in other parts of the country, like the prairies and Quebec. Anyway, that's just one example of how the climate makes it tough for people to build a strong foundation to support themselves. And that's exactly the 4th reason why Northern Ontario is so empty: the economy. It's not that there aren't any jobs available. In fact, there are plenty. In 2023, the northern part of Ontario had some of the highest job vacancy rates in the country. So unlike in many parts of the world, it's a place where they have tons of jobs available, but no people to fill them. One reason people don't take those jobs is that many of them are older. Just look at Elliott Lake, for example. 42% of the people living in the city are over 65 years old. That's the 3rd highest concentration of older adults anywhere in Canada. But it's not all that different in the rest of the region either. Estimates show that by 2036, people aged 65 and older will make up almost 30% of Northern Ontario's total population. And you see what happens when they hit 65, right? They've got their pensions, and going back to work just isn't on the radar. This problem only gets worse because young people just don't seem interested in living there. Every year, lots of students around 17 or 18 years old pack their bags and either drive across the province or fly across the country to study somewhere away from their northern homes. And many of them don't come back. But that's actually pretty strange considering the region does have a strong economy, especially in mining. Take the Red Lake area, for example. It's packed with gold. In fact, it's home to one of the richest gold deposits in the world and has already turned out over 30 million ounces of the metal. That's definitely helped Canada stay ranked among the top 5 gold-producing countries in the world. Then, there's this region, known as the Ring of Fire. It's centered around McFaulds Lake in the Kenora district and covers about 1,900 square miles. It's rich in valuable minerals like chromite, cobalt, nickel, copper, and platinum. These days, Northern Ontario's mining industry is making a big comeback and attracting new investments. That's happening because the world is suddenly desperately looking for critical minerals. By that, I mean essential elements used in modern technologies like smartphones and renewable energy systems. Minerals like cobalt, nickel, and copper are especially important for making the batteries that power electric cars, for example. So, right now, it seems like the whole mining scene in the region is doing pretty well, but the industry has gone through plenty of ups and downs, with fluctuations and periods of decline. And that, combined with the possible lack of variety and jobs outside the mining industry, means people are more likely to leave the region in search of better opportunities. Interestingly though, mining companies are now struggling to find enough skilled workers in Northern Ontario. And that's probably because of all the reasons we've already talked about: an older population, harsh weather, tough geography, and a long distance from major urban centers. So, it's basically a cycle. And local authorities are trying to break out of it by improving infrastructure in the region, offering more incentives, and finding ways to keep young workers from leaving. Some of their strategies include offering cash rewards to people who refer healthcare workers for job openings or providing tax-free payments to help cover higher home energy costs. And there are plenty of other initiatives too. So yeah, with strategies like these, it's definitely possible to grow the population there. And who knows, maybe one day this region could be bustling with people. The floor is lava! Haha, just kidding. But honestly, it's kind of falling apart. You might not feel it yet, but a huge part of North America has already lost 37 miles worth of rock from its foundation. And no, this isn't about earthquakes or giant sinkholes. It's about the continent losing pieces of the very thing that keeps the ground from wobbling around like a bad carnival ride. A team of researchers has just dropped a geological bombshell. Part of North America's ground is thinning out like a very sad, very slow ice cream drip. How do they know? They basically gave Earth a high-tech full-body MRI and created 3D maps showing how rocks once considered indestructible are now melting away into the planet's guts, like an upside-down cheese pizza inside an oven. But to really understand this mess, you first have to meet my old friends, cratons. Cratons are like the roots of the continents. They're thick, tough, and ancient. We're talking billions of years old. These bad boys survived meteor impacts, supervolcanoes, and even the tectonic movement of plates. If the plates got into fistfights, for example, you can bet we would see mountain ranges being born. If they got a divorce, drifting apart from each other, then a whole new ocean would be born. All of these things leave scars on the surface of Earth, but the cratons seem to always remain unfazed, like the cockroaches of geology. And since a craton can basically get punched in the face and feel nothing, scientists always assumed these things were nearly indestructible. But then, a group of researchers took their fancy machines to the test and realized that, wait, the cratons are falling apart? How? Enter the Farallon Plate, a really ancient tectonic plate that started to slide under North America's major plate over 100 million years ago. This is a pretty normal process, actually. It's called subduction, and it's how Earth recycles rocks and keeps itself from overheating. This subduction thing has been happening for so long that, by now, the Farallon is almost 400 miles away from the craton, sitting pretty chill at the lower mantle, weirdly close to the outer core of our planet. But the Farallon has been causing trouble, like that one roommate who moved out but keeps leaving weird stuff in the fridge. You see, as it sinks, it tugs on the bottom of North America's foundation, stretching it out and causing pieces to fall off into the deep mantle. And if that wasn't enough drama, the sinking Farallon has also leaked water and carbon dioxide into the surrounding rocks, making the craton even softer and easier to shred apart. Thanks, Farallon. Very cool of you. By studying hundreds of earthquakes across thousands of monitoring stations, scientists have confirmed the story. Big chunks of continental material are dripping downward, thinning the craton by as much as 37 miles. That's more missing rocks than can fit into a milk carton. Sounds dramatic, right? But don't worry. This is happening at a snail's pace. It'll take millions of years for anything noticeable to happen. Your great-great-great-great few grandkids from the distant future might still be standing on solid ground. But don't get too comfy. This thing may not be an urgent problem, but there's another type of sinking that's happening faster than you can say, "Help!" Here's the thing. By 2050, at least 32 major cities in the US, including New York, Baltimore, and Charleston, could be partially underwater. And guess what? This one is mostly our fault. Scientists noticed that since 2007, some cities have been sinking into the ground between 0.04 and 0.08 inches every year. Charleston, in South Carolina, is pulling ahead in the worst way possible, sinking 0.15 inches annually. Sure, these numbers sound tiny and a bit ridiculous, but Charleston is barely 9 feet above sea level, and a little sinking goes a long way when the ocean is breathing down your neck. On really bad flood days, people there have to abandon their cars and basically swim home. This whole phenomenon is called land subsidence, and when you mix sinking land with rising sea levels, you get a disaster cocktail of flooded streets, salty farmland, ghost forests, and a lot of very cranky homeowners. And it doesn't stop with just homes. Infrastructure like bridges, roads, airports, and power plants, all things we rely on daily, are also at risk of serious damage. Flooded electrical grids and sunken highways could cause billions more in economic losses and create major safety hazards for communities. Now, let's be fair. Not everything is humanity's fault. Some of this trouble dates all the way back to the Ice Age. About 12,000 years ago, massive ice sheets covered the northern US. They were heavy, like seriously heavy. The weight pushed the land down, and when the ice melted, the ground didn't just pop back up like a trampoline. Instead, it started playing a weird game of geological seesaw. The places that were squished started rising, and the places that weren't got pulled down. This whole process, called glacial isostatic adjustment, try to say that 3 times fast. But of course, humans found a way to make it worse. Groundwater extraction is a major culprit. Think of it like pulling the stuff out of the mattress. After a while, the whole thing just sags. In places like California's Central Valley, the land is dropping by up to 8 inches a year because we keep pumping out water during droughts. In cities like New York, the problem isn't just water. Skyscrapers themselves are making it worse. Yep, turns out if you stack millions of tons of concrete and steel onto soft ground, it tends to flatten. And in case you're wondering, the total mass of New York City's buildings is around 1.68 trillion pounds. That's about the same as 3.5 million statues of liberty piled up. With so much weight concentrated over a relatively small area, the underlying soils have no choice but to compress over time. And if you thought it couldn't get messier, think again. We've been building dams, which stop rivers from delivering fresh sediment to coastal areas. That sediment is kind of like Mother Nature's way of fluffing the ground back up. Without it, coastal lands are compacting like an old sponge. Plus, when wetlands are drained for agriculture or construction, the peaty soil dries out and collapses. Honestly, it's like the ground just can't catch a break. Scientists also noticed that the areas that used to be lush wetlands are now among the fastest sinking spots in the country, especially along the Gulf Coast. Louisiana, for example, is losing about a football field of land because of this mix of subsidence and rising seas. So what's the end game here for us regular people who just want to live above sea level? Well, it's not looking great. Ghost forests, which are basically drowned woodlands, are popping up. Farmland is turning salty and unusable. And even sunny day flooding, where streets flood without any rain, is becoming a thing. Yikes! Meanwhile, over on the West Coast, California is not exactly winning either. San Francisco and Los Angeles are both sinking, which means that rising sea levels could hit them twice as hard and twice as fast. In some places like the Palos Verdes Peninsula, the ground has been sinking so fast, people over there might as well live like moles. So, is America turning into the next Atlantis? Probably not next week, but without serious action, like cutting back on groundwater pumping and planning smarter cities, at least 500,000 people are in serious danger. And the housing damage could easily rack up a jaw-dropping $109 billion by 2050. In the end, while North America isn't about to sink like a poorly made souffle, it's definitely showing some cracks in the crust. So maybe let's ease up on groundwater pumping, rethink how and where we build, and invest a little more in keeping our feet dry. After all, if the floor really does become lava someday, we're gonna wish we had at least fixed the leaks first.
Consider South America and Africa. Don't they kind of look like they fit together, like puzzle pieces? Well, they actually did. But about 130 million years ago, South America was like, bye, and slowly started drifting away. These days, it's around 1,800 miles from Africa, and it's still on the move. Every year, the continent shifts a little more toward the Pacific Ocean. So, how's that even happening? Tectonic plates are constantly moving. That's what makes the Earth's surface shift over time, going from this to what we see today. But those movements happen so slowly that you and I can't see them go. So, no, Brazilians or Chileans aren't out there feeling their continent inching westward. But the numbers don't lie. South America is moving, and apparently all it wants is to get as far away as possible from this massive underwater mountain range called the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. But what exactly is pushing the land toward the Pacific Ocean? It is the heat inside our planet. Way down beneath the ocean, there are cracks in the Earth's crust, and magma, super hot melted rock, rises up through those cracks. When that happens, the magma cools and hardens into solid rock. Over time, this process might build underwater mountains, like the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. And as more new crust forms, it begins to push the older crust out of the way. In the process, tectonic plates and the continents riding on top of them get pushed along. Now, on the other side of South America, over by the Pacific, there is the Nazca Plate. It's heavier and it's moving eastward. Since it is denser, it is sliding underneath the South American Plate. This entire process is called subduction, and it's happening at a rate of about 3 inches per year. By the way, the collision between these two plates is what's behind all those breathtaking volcanoes scattered throughout the Andes, and it's also making the continent move. So, if everything goes according to plan, projections show that South America will end up more centered in the Pacific Ocean in the future. But some models suggest something way crazier. Before we get into that, though, we need to clear something up. Why on earth isn't Africa following in South America's footsteps? I mean, shouldn't it be drifting west too? Well, not quite. Africa is doing its own thing because it sits on the African Plate. So the Mid-Atlantic Ridge is located between those two continents, and just like it pushes the South American Plate, it also pushes the African Plate, but in the opposite direction. It's like this ridge is trying to split up two ex-besties, you know? But there's more. Africa is also being influenced by the East African Rift. That's one of those massive cracks we talked about earlier, but it's happening on land, which makes it extra dramatic. This is what's causing the continent to slowly split apart. It's a long story, but let's just say the rift is pulling Africa in more directions than South America ever had to deal with. Okay, now it is finally time to talk about that crazier thing that might happen to South America and everything around it in the future. Theory number 1. It could break away from North America. I know, super dramatic, but don't panic. We're talking hundreds of millions of years from now, and I won't be around. You see, both continents are moving in the same general direction, but at different speeds. The North American plate is cruising along at about 1 inch per year, while South America is moving a bit faster. So even though they're heading the same way, they are not keeping pace. Over time, as the Atlantic Ocean continues to widen and the Pacific keeps shrinking, all this tectonic movement could eventually pull the Americas apart. Theory number 2. Marine life could go through some major changes. Right now, the Americas act as kind of a giant wall between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Because of that, sea animals have evolved differently on each side. Take the green sea turtle, for example. The ones living in the Atlantic tend to be bigger and lighter in color. Meanwhile, their Pacific cousins are usually smaller and darker. But if, one day, there is no land blocking these two populations from mixing, they would end up with brand new migration routes, new nesting spots, and a lot more overlap in their territories. Now, multiply that scenario by hundreds of other species, and things could really get shaken up. We're talking about new interactions, unexpected competition, and maybe even the rise of entirely new species. Alright, theory number 3. America might meet Africa again. Right now, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge is busy creating a new seafloor, and because of that, the Atlantic Ocean is slowly getting wider. But in about 125 million years, scientists believe that process could come to a stop. Instead of the seafloor spreading apart, the ocean floor might start getting pulled under the continents. When that happens, the Atlantic will stop growing and start shrinking. And the water section between South America and Africa is likely to be the first part pulled beneath the land. That means the Americas and Africa could meet again. And when that happens, border countries could turn into super shaky places, with earthquakes happening all the time and brand new volcanoes popping up left and right. The eastern United States would no longer be known for the peaceful green slopes of the Appalachians, but for snow-covered giants that occasionally spew lava and ash, more like the Cascade Range out west. Countries would end up with totally new neighbors. Brazil might line up with Nigeria and Cameroon. Uruguay could be sitting right next to Angola. And Argentina might be sharing a border with South Africa. So if these two continents really do merge, how intense would that be? Well, for starters, this new supercontinent would instantly become the biggest one on Earth, about 1.5 times the size of Asia. And chances are, a brand new mountain range would form right where the continents meet, creating a natural border between nations. Being part of the same massive continent could make a lot of things way easier. For one, tourism could totally take off. People traveling between countries by land without needing pricey plane tickets could be a game changer. But it wouldn't stop there. Other types of economic activity could get a major boost too. Now on one side we have South America, which already produces and sells a wide variety of foods, from wheat to bananas, beef, cocoa, soybeans, hey, you name it. On the other side, there is Africa, exporting things like textiles and clothing. That alone would make them a super powerful bloc when it comes to trading raw goods. But can you name another important thing these two continents have in common? Yep, petroleum. Countries in South America, like Brazil, Venezuela, and Colombia, are major oil exporters. And over in Africa, you've got Nigeria, Algeria, and Libya doing the same. Now, can you see just how powerful that kind of union could be? Meanwhile, let's talk about animals. These two massive lands coming together could lead us to wild meetups, like a capybara sharing space with a Nile crocodile, or a sloth seeing a hyena from the top of a tree. This could even lead to new animal hybrids showing up, like a tabby crocodile or a sloth hyena. Okay, those weren't the cleverest names, and honestly, these animals wouldn't be able to mate or even wouldn't want to. But you get the point, right? It's not all positive, unfortunately. New species showing up could become predators, competitors, or even parasites to the native plants and animals. It would take a long time for things to settle into a new balance in those border regions. But honestly, no one really knows how long it would take. The only thing I do know is neither of us will be around to see it, which is okay.
At first, researchers thought their cameras were glitching. It was the only possible thing that could explain the weird view in front of them. Scalding water was blasting upward while cool methane was fizzing out right beside it. Such a combo wasn't supposed to even exist, but it did. Scientists were exploring the ocean floor near Papua New Guinea when they stumbled across a weird deep-sea hotspot. It wasn't like any other hotspot. There, super hot and cool methane-packed gas were bubbling out almost side by side. This almost never happens in nature, so the researchers were pretty shocked. They were cruising around with a deep-diving robot, the Rove Keel 6000, poking around underwater volcanoes in a remote island chain. These volcanoes hide all sorts of strange features, but nobody expected to find a full-on hydrothermal vent just tucked down there. Plus, other research trips had passed through the area before and missed it completely. This time, the robot's cameras lit up the seafloor and revealed a bizarre view: boiling vents and cold gas seeping out of the seabed. They were practically touching each other. As you understand, normally these two things show up in totally different places. Hot hydrothermal vents form when underground water gets cooked by magma and shoots upward, carrying minerals with it. Methane seeps, on the other hand, come from cold, mushy layers of sediment packed with old organic matter. This stuff slowly breaks down and leaks out as gas. But at this spot, the geology created a perfect mashup. Under the volcano sits a thick layer of organic-rich sediment. Magma creeping up from below heats these sediments, but at the same time, it also heats mineral-rich water deeper down. So you get two very different fluids, blazing hot vent water and cooler methane gas. Still, both are traveling upward through the same cracks in the seafloor. When they reach the surface, they escape just inches apart. So you end up with this bizarre little neighborhood where boiling mineral water and chilly methane bubbles are hanging out like best buddies. To ocean scientists, this is like discovering a unicorn that can also fly. It's weird, rare, and super exciting. An even more exciting thing is that right next to those weird hot and cold vents, an entire mini-world of creatures has taken over the rocks. The place is packed with huge clusters of deep-sea mussels, long tube worms, little shrimp and amphipods crawling everywhere, and even bright purple sea cucumbers sitting out in the open. The animals are so crowded together that it's hard to even see the rock underneath. Scientists are pretty sure some of these creatures are totally new to science, but they need a special trip just to identify everything living there. The strange mix of hot fluids and methane-heavy gas also changes the rocks themselves. The methane down there is super concentrated, while hot water coming from deeper inside the volcano brings chemicals with it. Together, they create unusual reactions underground. Because of this, metals like gold and silver have built up in the rocks, along with elements like arsenic, antimony, and mercury. It's like a chemical time capsule. The rocks show signs of an older, super hot phase when precious metals were forming. Today, the vents are cooler, but still active. Now, even though this deep sea area is rare and full of life, it isn't safe. Mining already happens nearby, and waste from the huge gold mine on Lahir gets dumped into the ocean. On top of that, companies have licenses to explore the seafloor for minerals and gas. All of this puts the fragile vent community in danger because many of the animals here can only survive in these exact conditions. So scientists are urging for more research and strong protection plans before this one-of-a-kind ecosystem is damaged beyond repair. This underwater treasure needs to be saved before industry wipes it out. This discovery, though, isn't the only unique ecosystem we've ever found. In January 2025, a gigantic iceberg named A84, roughly the size of Chicago, cracked off Antarctica's George VI ice shelf. This ice shelf is enormous on its own, stretching about 280 miles from end to end and about 820 feet thick. During the Antarctic summer, which is November through late February, the top of the ice shelf melts and forms long, skinny pools called ribbon lakes. They got that name because they really do look like giant icy ribbons stretched across the surface. Once A84 broke free and drifted off, it exposed part of the seafloor that had been sealed away under the ice for who knows how long. It was a place absolutely nobody had seen before. A research team aboard the ship Falkor 2 happened to be in the Bellingshausen Sea at the time. As soon as they got word about the iceberg breaking loose, they ditched their original plan. This was basically the deep-sea version of flipping over a huge rock in the woods just to see what's living underneath it. For 8 days, the scientists sent down their underwater robot, Sebastian, and explored depths of more than 4,200 feet. Down in that freezing darkness, they discovered a hidden ecosystem packed with life. Huge corals and sponges formed underwater neighborhoods that were absolutely crawling with creatures. They were not just barely alive, they were thriving. So yeah, the scientists expected to find something down there, but they definitely didn't hope to spot a full-on underwater city of ancient life. There were sea anemones that looked like tiny fluffy trees, sea spiders marching around like creatures from other planets, ice fish, octopuses, and a whole mix of other animals. The entire expedition was live-streamed to researchers around the world. By the way, the recordings are still publicly available if you're interested. Even cooler, the researchers think some of the creatures they saw might actually be brand new species. That's right, genuinely new species in Antarctica in 2025. A few might live only in this one area, and that makes sense because Antarctica is basically its own isolated planet. It's surrounded by the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, which acts like a giant watery moat that has kept the continent cut off from the rest of the world for millions of years. But even if the new species ended up being known ones, the scientists still found some extremely rare animals, like tiny snails, bristly worms, aka polychaetes, little crustaceans, and even the mysterious phantom jellyfish, which already looks like something from outer space. The scientific name for the phantom jelly is Stygiomedusa gigantea, but no one really needs that mouthful, so giant phantom jelly is fine. This thing is massive. Its bell, the umbrella-shaped top, can be more than 3 feet wide. It also has 4 long ribbon-like arms that can stretch up to 33 feet. That's the length of a school bus. Actually, the first one was collected in 1899, but scientists didn't even realize it was a completely new kind of jellyfish until 60 years later. Its body is mostly see-through with a ghostly purple tint, and instead of normal tentacles, it uses those big flowing arms to grab prey and feed itself. Even though jellyfish don't have brains, the way this giant phantom jelly moved caught scientists off guard. It seemed to steer its long arms with surprising control, especially when it drifted through tight spaces near the seafloor. It looked cautious and almost intentional, which is kinda unsettling. Another maybe kinda sorta smart creature lurking in the dark ocean? Great. The researchers also found bristleworms. Officially, they're called polychaetes, but bristleworms sounds way more fun. These worms are common in cold, deep oceans and come in tons of shapes and sizes. Their bodies are made of segments lined with tiny bristles that help them crawl, sense the environment, and defend themselves. One standout is the Antarctic scale worm, which has shiny golden bristles that make it look surprisingly fancy for a creature living in freezing darkness. So, as you see, there are still tons of places and things on Earth that don't seem real or aren't even supposed to exist. And even with our level of technology, we're unlikely to figure out all the wonders the world has to offer in the near future.
Hey, quick question. How many continents are there? 7? Maybe 5? There's no correct answer. According to different approaches, the range is between 4 to 7. But it might actually be as many as 8. Chances are, a lost continent has recently been found between Greenland and Canada. This new continent discovery could also potentially be the key to how microcontinents form. What does this all mean, and what makes this hidden landmass near Greenland so important? Now, if you're like me, and if you are, then there's 2 of us, when you hear the word continent, you probably think of land like Europe or Africa, places above water where people live. But in science, a continent isn't about being above sea level. It's about what the land is made of. Earth's outer layer, called the crust, comes in 2 main types, continental and oceanic. Continental one is thicker, lighter, and made of different types of rock, like granite. The oceanic crust is thinner, heavier, and made mostly of dark volcanic rock. Now, the discovery under the Davis Strait between Greenland and Canada appears to be a piece of continental landmass, even though it's under the ocean. Scientists call it a proto-microcontinent because it began to break off from a larger terrain millions of years ago, but never quite made it. As tectonic plates slowly shifted, the Earth's crust in this region stretched and cracked. One chunk started to split away, but for some reason, the process stopped. It didn't drift off like a full continent, and it didn't sink like ocean crust either. Instead, it stayed right there, floating beneath the waves all this time. This makes it different from true microcontinents, like Zealandia, which have completely detached and now exist as separate tectonic blocks. Zealandia is a submerged microcontinent near New Zealand. About 94% of it lies underwater, but because it's made of continental crust, many geologists say it qualifies as Earth's 8th continent. However, Zealandia is still debated because it's too big to be a microcontinent, and there's no official global body to define its status. There's no global organization like the UN or some kind of international geology council that can declare, hey, this is a new continent. Unlike Madagascar, which is fully above sea level and widely accepted by geologists as a classic example of a microcontinent, Zealandia is still waiting for a proper label. I know you're probably wondering, isn't Madagascar an island? The simple answer is, it's both. It's the 4th largest island in the world, completely surrounded by water. But it's also geologically considered a microcontinent because it broke off from the supercontinent Gondwana around 88 million years ago and is made of continental crust, not oceanic crust. Unlike volcanic islands like Hawaii, this isn't just built from lava. It's a real piece of ancient continental crust. So Madagascar checks both boxes: island by geography, microcontinent by geology. And that's exactly why these discoveries can be fascinating. Just like Madagascar stands out above the waves, this newly discovered landmass under the Davis Strait stands out beneath them, thanks to its unusual structure. What makes it stand out is its unusual thickness. Most of the ocean floor is thin, like metal. This is more like packed clay, layered with continental materials. Underneath this cozy comforter, scientists discovered some odd layers of rock, unusual because they're not where they should be. These layers act more like the materials found on continents rather than those typically seen on ocean floors. There are hints of granite-like formations and distinct magnetic properties, which suggest that this stuff is similar to what makes up dry land. The size is also remarkable. The proto-microcontinent is about 12 to 15 miles across, which makes it roughly the size of a mid-sized city, like Manhattan Island that's 6,500 feet underwater. The fact that it sits right under the Davis Strait, one of the widest ocean passages on Earth, makes it one of the largest submerged continental fragments we've found. According to researchers, this landmass began to form between 58 and 49 million years ago, when Greenland and Canada were slowly drifting apart. Maybe they just weren't getting along. Hey, it happens. As they pulled apart, the crust under the Davis Strait stretched, and one of the main fault lines shifted. But the breakup didn't finish. Around 48 million years ago, the rifting stalled and Greenland's motion away from Canada slowed dramatically when it later bumped into Ellesmere Island. It's like a car swerving off and then back onto the freeway, a turn that was never completed. That's basically what happened. A chunk of land got stuck between the motion. It didn't float off into the ocean like a new continent, and it didn't get pulled down into the earth either. It just stayed where it was, stranded beneath the water. But that's not all. This chunk has its own fault system, and scientists say it actually looks like a miniature version of the San Andreas Fault in California. Now, a fault is basically a crack in the Earth's crust where sections of rock slide past each other. Think of it as a place where the Earth's surface split and tried to slide sideways. In California, this movement still happens today and can cause earthquakes. But under the Davis Strait, it's a different story. The movement started, then suddenly stopped, like hitting pause in the middle of a big shift. It's a frozen moment in the planet's past, preserved right beneath the waves. For geologists, that makes the microcontinent under Davis Strait incredibly valuable. That sudden pause in motion helps explain why some chunks of land break away cleanly, while others twist, stall, or disappear. But this isn't just academic. By studying how continents break apart or stall, scientists can better predict future shifts in land, fault lines, and seismic activity. And predicting earthquakes and geological hazards could prove quite valuable to everyone. Knowing how microcontinents form could help us anticipate how the planet's surface might shift over millions of years, which affects everything from climate models to resource availability. But even just the technological advancement needed for such discoveries is greatly beneficial. The same tools used to map this hidden land are used for oil exploration, laying undersea cables, climate monitoring, and even search and rescue missions. Speaking of technology, for a long time, this hidden landmass near Greenland remained invisible. Just 10 or 15 years ago, the ocean floor under the Davis Strait was basically a mystery. It's deep, almost frozen, obviously not the easiest place to explore. But today, thanks to modern tools, a new continent discovery could be just a matter of time. Scientists can finally see and hear what's going on under all that water. First, they use seismic reflection imaging. That's a method where ships send sound waves down to the ocean floor and record how they bounce back. Various layers of rock reflect sounds in different ways, which helps build a picture of what's hidden underneath. It's kind of like how bats use echoes to see in the dark. Satellites also play a role in collecting gravity data. This may sound strange, but different types of rocks have slightly different weights. Heavier rocks create stronger gravitational pull, and satellites can measure those tiny differences. Another tool commonly used for these explorations is underwater sensors, which sit quietly on the seafloor and listen for natural vibrations, like mini earthquakes or shifts in rock. These vibrations help scientists figure out what the crust is made of and how thick it is. They're basically ears on the ocean floor. They also most likely used AUVs, or autonomous underwater vehicles, basically robot submarines that can scan the seafloor in high resolution even under thick ice. In any case, scientists are very excited because this new continent discovery is more than just a geological surprise. It's what they call a natural laboratory. The study of the microcontinent Davis Strait offers a rare opportunity to understand how microcontinents form, evolve, and sometimes fail to fully separate. It also reminds us that Earth's crust isn't as neatly divided as we once thought. Beneath the ocean, there may be other hidden landmasses near Greenland or elsewhere, almost continents just waiting to be found. This lost continent of Canada may not have made it as a fully fledged landmass, but its discovery is already reshaping how we view plate tectonics. And thanks to advances in technology, places we once ignored are now offering up secrets about the planet's deep past, and maybe even its future.
Frankenstein, unreasonably cold weather, and tons of lava. What do these things have in common? They all trace their origins back to Mount Tambora. This volcano in Indonesia had such a massive impact that the aftermath could be felt in Switzerland even a year later. And these spots are thousands of miles apart. Soon, we might be facing something similar again. Stick around because I'm about to reveal the exact spot where the next eruption is expected to happen in 2025. Back in 1815, Mount Tambora erupted with unprecedented force, sending a colossal cloud of fine particles into the atmosphere. This cloud reflected sunlight, leading to global cooling and even the year without a summer in 1816. Temperatures plummeted, crops failed, and families worldwide faced food shortages, compounded by various health issues. Fun fact: Frankenstein appeared because of abnormally cold weather in the summer of 1816. The author got stuck indoors in Switzerland and wrote this story to pass the time. But that is the only positive aftermath. In England and Ireland, people struggled to find food. The crops were too bad that year, and this year without summer cost them lives, all because of the eruption in Indonesia. While many other volcanoes have erupted since then, none have had consequences as dramatic as Tambora. However, climate professor Marcus Stoffel from the University of Geneva believes potential serious eruptions aren't just a matter of luck, it's only a matter of time. So it's up to us. We can sit back and wait for the inevitable, or we can start preparing today. This future eruption will happen in a world that's vastly different from the one in 1815. Not only is our planet more densely populated now, but we've also experienced irreversible changes that affect our daily lives. Now, if you think volcanoes are always the bad guys, think again. They've actually played a crucial role in shaping our planet. They help with land formation, atmospheric development, and climate modulation. Just look at Yellowstone, for example. When thick lava oozed to the surface, it spread across the landscape and transformed the area forever. When volcanoes blow their tops, they release a mix of lava, ash, and gases, including carbon dioxide. But don't worry, compared to the emissions from fossil fuels, the amount from volcanoes is pretty tiny. What scientists are really keeping an eye on is sulfur dioxide, because it can have a big impact on our climate. When a major volcanic eruption happens, it can send sulfur dioxide soaring into the stratosphere, which is about 7 miles up in the atmosphere. Once there, it transforms into tiny aerosol particles that scatter sunlight, helping to cool the planet. This cooling effect isn't immediate though. Those particles can hang around for a couple of years and even circulate all around the globe. Nowadays, we've got special equipment to monitor sulfur dioxide emissions from space. Take Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines. During its eruption in 1991, it released around 15 million tons of sulfur dioxide. Now, while that's a lot, it wasn't quite as massive as the eruption of Tambora. Still, Pinatubo managed to lower global temperatures by about 0.5 degrees Celsius for several years. Tambora, on the other hand, dropped average global temperatures by about 1 degree Fahrenheit. I know what you might be thinking. That's not much, but trust me, it makes a difference. If the planet warms up by just 1 degree Fahrenheit, it could really mess with sea levels. Experts think we might see a rise of up to 8 inches by the end of this century. This could wipe out a lot of farmland and coastal habitats, which would be a huge blow to many communities. So maybe a volcano eruption that can cool off the planet is like a natural mechanism helping us out? Not exactly. While it does cool the planet off, don't get tricked into thinking it's the kind of coolness our planet needs. Such temperature shifts can severely mess up with the crops, like they did in 1816. There's also evidence that major eruptions can disrupt rainfall patterns, leading to drier conditions in monsoon regions across Africa and Asia. You see, the summer monsoon relies on the temperature difference between land and ocean, which can be altered by volcanic activity. Interestingly, a warmer climate may enhance the cooling effects of volcanic eruptions. Experts explain that the formation and movement of aerosol particles depend on climate conditions. As global temperatures rise, faster air circulation can lead to smaller aerosol particles, which are more effective at scattering sunlight and thereby intensifying the cooling effect. Oceans also contribute to this dynamic. A warming ocean surface creates a stratified layer, hindering the mixing of warm and cold water, which could mean that volcanic eruptions primarily cool the upper ocean layer and the atmosphere above it, according to Stoffel. Moreover, climate change may influence volcanic systems directly. The melting of ice can trigger more eruptions by reducing the pressure that allows magma to ascend more easily. Additionally, increased rainfall associated with climate change can seep into the ground and interact with magma, potentially sparking eruptions. While the prospect of a cooling period due to a volcanic eruption might seem beneficial amid climate change, scientists warn that the effects could be dire. The immediate consequences could be severe, particularly for the estimated 800 million individuals residing near active volcanoes. A major eruption could devastate entire cities. For example, Campi Flegrei, located near Naples, Italy, is showing signs of increased activity and threatens the lives of about 1 million people. Now, if you're from Oregon, beware, as experts say this state might experience volcano eruptions. Are you scared? Don't be. It's actually not as scary as it seems. Let me explain why. There are more than 80 volcanoes in Oregon, but we're not interested in a single one of them because it's an underwater volcano that is likely to erupt in 2025. Axial Seamount is the most active volcano in the Pacific Northwest, yet it remains largely unknown to the public due to its location approximately 300 miles offshore and nearly a mile beneath the ocean surface. While its upcoming eruption is expected to pose no threat of a tsunami or significant land-based earthquakes because of its depth and distance from the Cascadia Fault, the data gathered from studying its eruptions can enhance our monitoring of potentially more hazardous volcanoes. Let's call it a friendly eruption, shall we? In reality, predicting eruptions is a complex endeavor. We often encounter alarming headlines, such as, "Yellowstone is about to erupt." Should we take these claims seriously? Not really. Yes, Yellowstone sits atop an active supervolcano that has experienced 3 major explosive eruptions in the past 2.1 million years. The last eruption occurred approximately 70,000 years ago, with the most significant explosion taking place around 631,000 years ago, forming the massive Yellowstone caldera. Naturally, many people are curious about whether Yellowstone will erupt again and when that might happen. Fortunately, scientists are employing new techniques to delve into these questions. A recent study suggests that Yellowstone is unlikely to experience another major eruption anytime soon. The reason is that the magma beneath the park is divided into a network of separate chambers. While there is a substantial amount of magma present, it's not sufficiently interconnected to support an eruption. Previous studies proposed that the existence of a massive layer of magma beneath Yellowstone, but these latest findings change that notion. To gain a clearer understanding of the subterranean dynamics, researchers utilized a technique called magnetotellurics, which employs Earth's natural electromagnetic fields rather than seismic waves. Since magma is a good conductor of electricity, this method is particularly effective for mapping molten rock and comprehending underground activity in volcanically active regions. By using magnetotellurics, scientists created a detailed map of the magma under Yellowstone, enabling them to make more informed predictions about future eruptions. But what will happen if an eruption similar to Mount Tambora occurs? By and large, there will be huge climate chaos. Yeah, the best scientists are looking for the solution should it really happen, but they don't have it yet. So technically, we're not ready for the second Mount Tambora. But for now, we're pretty much safe. No major eruptions are predicted. Whew! Some places don't look important, until the world realizes they hold the keys to the future. That's the case with Canada's Arctic. For most of history, it was just ice, snow, rocks, caribou, and even more ice. But now, it's about to become one of the most important places on Earth, and maybe make Canada a global superpower. Why? Because it's hiding minerals that power electric vehicles, satellites, and missile systems, while the demand is skyrocketing. However, it's not just mining and having resources, it's also about control. Right now, China has a massive head start because it refines over 90% of the world's rare earths. That means if you want to launch a satellite, manufacture advanced electronics, or even just keep the lights on in your fancy smart home, odds are you're relying on China. And that makes a lot of world powers very nervous. Because when everything's going electric, the last thing you need is being dependent on your geopolitical rival. So now, the global clean tech treasure hunt is officially on. The US, Europe, Japan, Australia, they're all competing. However, the latest technology and untapped potential might give Canada the upper hand. Canada's had these minerals for decades. But with low prices, tough terrain, and no global rush, they mostly stayed untouched. However, Ottawa is finally stepping up its game. Back in 2022, Canada rolled out the Critical Minerals Strategy with billions in funding and tax perks to get companies digging. There's also plans to build the necessary roads, ports, and power lines to tap into those remote deposits up north. Canada already produces more than 60 minerals and metals, but 31 of them are now considered critical. 6 of those are having VIP treatment: lithium, graphite, nickel, cobalt, copper, and rare earth elements. But digging it up is just step 1. The real plan? Keep it local. Melt that frozen treasure into shiny new batteries right at home. That means not just mines, but also refineries, processing centers, and high-tech factories popping up where there used to be nothing but snowdrifts and silence. While others are talking, Canada's busy paving roads and stringing power lines. Slowly but surely, they're turning snowfields into a high-tech playground. Getting to all that buried treasure used to be nearly impossible. After all, we're talking about land so remote that roads literally stop hundreds of miles too early. The ground is frozen solid for most of the year. And even if you found something valuable, just getting out was a logistical nightmare. So what changed? Canada has an ace up its sleeve. Don't know about you, but I use it mainly for making memes and music. But geologists? They're scanning the Arctic like it's Minecraft with X-ray vision. Instead of drilling blind, they're using decades-old core samples, plugging them into AI, and getting shockingly accurate predictions about what's underground. It's like upgrading from a pirate's treasure map to a GPS that actually says, "Dig here." Companies like Geologic AI and Cobalt Metals are already doing this, pouring data into AI and getting X marks the spot hits for nickel, cobalt, and rare earths. In the Northwest Territories, Canada is running a pilot lab that uses AI and digital scanning to reanalyze decades-old rock samples. The goal is to spot hidden mineral deposits that old methods might have missed without digging a single new hole. All that sounds great, but maybe I made it sound simpler than it is. Digging up the Arctic is a logistical nightmare. For starters, this isn't just a remote patch of land. The Canadian Arctic is huge. Almost half the country, stretching over Yukon, the Northwest Territories, and Nunavut. We're talking about a region larger than India, with fewer people than a small city. Most of it is permafrost, wilderness, or ice-covered islands scattered across the Arctic archipelago. Temperatures go from barely 50 degrees Fahrenheit during summer to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit or colder, with ground that stays frozen for most of the year. Fun fact, did you know that negative 40 degrees happens to be the same as negative 40 degrees Celsius? It's the one temperature where both scales intersect. They climb at different rates, but eventually cross paths when it gets cold enough. Just a small trivia nugget for weather nerds like me. Anyways, you can't just roll in a truck and break ground in the Arctic. Up there, roads just stop. Want to build something? It can take years, and one nasty winter can put everything on ice. And if you want to continue up north, you need more of everything. More food, more fuel, more machines. Which means even more money. Speaking of money, another chilling fact is how much this all costs. Mining in the far north is way more expensive than doing it in, say, Australia or Chile. An AI might tell you where the minerals are, but people and big machines still have to dig, and that costs a fortune. But that's not all. Most of the Canadian North is Indigenous land. First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities have lived there for thousands of years, and mineral hotspots often sit right on their ancestral grounds. So when Canada talks about unlocking the Arctic, it's not just a question of roads and robots. It's a question of partnership and collaboration. And that's not optional. Legally, projects on Indigenous land require consultation and, in many cases, consent. The good news, some communities aren't just involved, they're leading the way. In regions like Nunavut and the Northwest Territories, Indigenous-owned corporations and world powers are already shaping how development happens on their terms. If Canada wants to pull this off, it's going to need more than tech and funding. It's going to need trust. So with all that in mind, can Canada pull this off? Honestly? With technological advancements and partnerships, it doesn't seem impossible. But Canada isn't just doing one thing right. It's doing a bunch of things at the same time. Let's recap. Hidden resources? Checked. New strategy? In place. Big funding? Approved. AI tools? Deployed. Indigenous partnerships? Underway. Infrastructure? Already breaking ground. It's a snowball turning into an avalanche. Exploration boosts investment. Investment speeds up roads. Roads unlock more deposits. More deposits attract more factories. It's a feedback loop, and if they keep feeding it, the whole Arctic operation could go from an idea to empire faster than anyone expects, giving a whole new meaning to the phrase frozen assets. But this doesn't just help Canada. It could save the US a whole lot of trouble. If all goes to plan, the US won't need to ship rare earths halfway across the planet. It can just look north, wave at the caribou, and get what it needs from its closest neighbor. That's why the US has publicly backed the effort, offering support and funding to help build a trusted North American supply chain. For Canada, this could be the moment it stops being just a supplier of raw materials and starts becoming a critical power broker in the clean tech economy. For the US, it's like discovering your neighbor has been secretly building a battery factory in their backyard, while you were building electric vehicles. And globally? Well, the abundance of resources tends to lower the prices, and that's always a good thing for us regular people. Cheaper cobalt, nickel, and lithium mean cheaper batteries. And cheaper batteries mean more affordable electric vehicles, energy storage, phones, laptops, the works. Now, don't get too excited just yet. Like we said, mining in the Arctic isn't cheap. But in theory, once Canada's clean tech engine is fully up and humming, more supply and shorter supply chains should gradually bring costs down. And it's not just about price tags, it's about stability. Right now, if one country cuts exports or gets caught in politics, everything down the line gets shaky. But with Canada stepping in as a reliable supplier, the global system might get a bit more breathing room. Manufacturers can stop sweating over single points of failure and start building with confidence.
Oh boy, scientists predict a volcanic eruption that is likely to be one of the most destructive in the history of our species. There's a 1 in 6 chance of it happening in this century, and it could seriously change the climate even more and put millions of lives in danger. Back in January 2022, the Hunga Tonga Hunga Ha'apai volcano erupted in the South Pacific Ocean, creating a huge explosion. It sent tsunamis all the way to Japan, North America, and South America. Tonga itself was hit hard, with damage costing nearly 20% of the country's entire economy. Now, researchers at the Niels Bohr Institute in Copenhagen have studied ice samples from Greenland and Antarctica, and their findings are worrying, predicting potential global volcanic disaster. They say there's a real chance of a much bigger eruption, a whopping 10 to 100 times larger than Tonga's. In the past, eruptions this size used to change the climate and even cause civilizations to collapse. Despite future volcanic eruption risks, Experts say the world isn't prepared at all. Michael Cassidy, a volcanologist from the University of Birmingham, warns that no sufficient effort is made to handle a disaster like this. He says that NASA and other space agencies spend billions on asteroid defense. At the same time, a volcanic supereruption is way more likely than an asteroid impact. And right now, there's no global plan for dealing with a massive eruption, even though it's likely to be far more destructive. The last magnitude 7 eruption happened in 1815 at Mount Tambora in Indonesia. Then, thousands of people lost their lives in just a few days. The disaster also disrupted weather and caused food shortages worldwide, affecting millions. That eruption was the biggest in recorded history. It blasted a massive cloud of particles into the sky. Those particles blocked sunlight, cooled the planet, and caused worldwide chaos. The year after the eruption became known as the Year Without a Summer. Temperatures plummeted, crops failed, famine spread, and a cholera pandemic broke out, leading to tens of thousands of lost lives. A shocking fact, the eruption may have even inspired Mary Shelley to write Frankenstein while stuck indoors during the unusually cold summer of 1816 in Switzerland. Now, since then, many volcanoes have erupted, but none have matched Tambora's scale. Now, over 200 years later, scientists warn that there's a new supervolcano threat. Another massive eruption could be on the way, and the world might not be ready for it. So, while scientists seriously discuss the likelihood of the next volcanic eruption, experts are calling for urgent action to prepare before it's too late. So, the thing is, a massive volcanic eruption today could be even more devastating than the Year Without a Summer. Unlike back then, we're already dealing with all kinds of weather changes and a more fragile global system, which could make the effects even worse. Dr. Michael Rampino, a geological scientist, warns that the world is more unstable now, and it means that a modern-day mega-eruption could have even more severe consequences. But this time, greenhouse gases from fossil fuels may make the aftermath of such an eruption even colder instead of warmer. So we're talking about volcanic activity endangering humanity. Dr. Thomas Aubrey, a volcanologist, found that in a hotter, more turbulent atmosphere, the sulfur dioxide gas released by a volcanic eruption would spread faster and farther than in the past. This gas forms sulfate aerosols, which reflect sunlight and cause global cooling. Because these tiny particles would be more evenly distributed, they'd have a stronger cooling effect than in 1815. Another atmospheric scientist at Cambridge explains that the size of these airborne particles matters. It affects how they absorb sunlight, and in a future warmer climate, an eruption could make the surface cooling stronger by 15%. At the same time, there are still many unknowns. Scientists from the University of Geneva say that we're only beginning to understand the full impacts of such an event. It's also difficult to precisely estimate future volcanic eruption risks, since we have very little data on older eruptions. So, to understand past volcanic activity, researchers analyze ice cores from Greenland and Antarctica, as well as ancient tree rings. Those act as historical records of weather changes. These measurements suggest that several eruptions in the past few thousand years temporarily cooled the planet by about 2 to 2.5 degrees Fahrenheit. One of the most catastrophic examples is the 1257 Somalus eruption in Indonesia, which was so powerful that it likely triggered the Little Ice Age. It was a period of global cooling that lasted for hundreds of years. More recently, the 1991 Mount Pinatubo eruption in the Philippines slightly cooled Earth for a few years. Because this eruption happened in the satellite era, scientists were able to measure exactly how much sulfur dioxide was released and how it affected the atmosphere. But even with modern tools like satellites and seismic instruments, scientists still have difficult times forecasting the next big volcanic eruption. Luckily, even though we can't predict the exact timing, we can study worst-case scenarios to help authorities prepare. This includes creating evacuation plans and stockpiling food in case of global crop failures caused by volcanic cooling. The changes in weather patterns might make volcanoes more active. Melting glaciers can reduce pressure on underground magma, which will increase the chances of an eruption. Plus, more extreme rainfall, which is becoming more and more common, can seep into volcanic cracks and cause powerful steam-driven explosions. It can affect both active and dormant volcanoes. Because of these risks, researchers are now mapping volcanoes that are the most vulnerable to climate change. Their studies show that the highest supervolcano threat comes from such areas as Iceland, Chile, and Indonesia. Those are places where glaciers are melting quickly or rainfall is increasing dramatically. A 2022 study found that 716 volcanoes worldwide, that's about 58% of all known active above-ground volcanoes, could be triggered by extreme rainfall, increasing the likelihood of another mini ice age. Now let's get back to that Hunga Tonga Hunga Ha'apai eruption that occurred on January 15, 2022. Scientists have confirmed that it created the highest plume ever recorded. The volcano, located underwater in the South Pacific, sent an ash cloud 187,000 feet high. That's higher than any previously recorded eruption. What makes this eruption even more remarkable is that it was the first to ever reach the mesosphere. It's the third layer of Earth's atmosphere. The mesosphere begins at about 160,000 feet above Earth, where meteors start burning up and creating shooting stars. To measure the plume's height, researchers from the University of Oxford and RAL Space used data from 3 geostationary weather satellites. Before this, the record for the highest volcanic plume was held by Mount Pinatubo's 1991 eruption in the Philippines, which reached 131,000 feet high. Interestingly, this kind of measurement was only possible thanks to modern satellite technology, and a decade ago, no one would have been able to do this. Another volcano we should mention in relation to a potential global volcanic disaster is located on Iceland's Reykjanes Peninsula. Its latest eruption happened in November of 2024, leading to evacuations in nearby areas. The eruption began just after 11 p.m. with little warning. The volcano released orange lava from a nearly 2-mile-long fissure. Authorities ordered evacuations for about 50 homes and guests staying at the Blue Lagoon Spa Resort, a popular tourist destination southwest of Reykjavik. While air travel was not affected, officials still warned of potentially dangerous gas emissions spreading across parts of the peninsula, including the nearby town of Grindavik. Grindavik, home to 3,800 residents, has repeatedly witnessed volcanic activity, and past eruptions even damaged its infrastructure and forced evacuations. For example, in August 2024, a 2.5-mile-long crack opened at the Sunthunkangigar crater near Grindavik. It led authorities declaring a state of emergency as lava flowed in multiple directions. Fortunately, Iceland's meteorological office reported that the latest eruption was significantly smaller than the one in August. Geophysics experts conducted aerial surveys and figured out that the situation appeared less intense than the previous eruptions. These days, Grindavik is not at risk, but the possibility of further developments cannot be ruled out. Scientists predict more volcanic eruptions. Kilauea, one of the most active volcanoes in the world, erupted again in March 2026 on Hawaii's Big Island. Huge lava fountains shot into the sky. The main highway was closed, and the airport was blocked by sandpaper clouds of ash. The sky turned a creepy deep red. That's how thick the smoke was. The eruption literally closed some areas of the island. It was already the second time this year. The eruption happened right inside the Halemu'umu'u crater at the volcano summit. Things got dangerous fast, and visitors had to evacuate the volcano summit. The lava fountain shot straight up about 1,300 feet. That's almost as tall as the Empire State Building or higher than the Eiffel Tower. But let's watch the eruption unfold step by step. It started on March 10, 2026, and lasted about 9 hours, ending suddenly at 6:21 p.m. The eruption started in the morning at 9:17, with lava shooting up from the north vent. As for the south vent, it started erupting just before 10 a.m. By early afternoon, the lava fountains were huge. The south vent reached 1,150 feet high, and the north vent was 1,000 feet. The lava was flowing across about 1/3 of the crater floor, glowing bright orange and red. As the lava cooled in the air, it turned into something called tephra. That's a mix of volcanic rock, ash, and tiny glassy shards. Tephra can scratch your skin like sandpaper, making your eyes sting and making it hard to breathe. Even worse, it can turn roads into skating rinks for cars. Because all of this, part of Highway 11 was closed between mile markers 24 and 40. Back in January, during another eruption, it also rained tephra over the park and nearby towns. Some unlucky visitors actually got hit by falling tephra, and a few even got cuts. The Park Service had to close the summit for the first time since its eruption cycle began on December 23, 2024. Now, the National Weather Service says the eruption plume reached 25,000 feet high. That's nearly 5 miles straight up, higher than most airplanes fly. Winds were blowing from the south, so ash and gas started moving north from Halima'uma'u. Officials warned people in nearby cities to stay indoors or leave if the gases began to bother them. Now, this eruption wasn't the first trouble Kilauea caused this year. An earlier one started on February 15th and lasted almost 10 hours. During that eruption, lava covered half of the crater floor. Scientists estimate that 15 million cubic yards of lava came out. That's enough to fill thousands of swimming pools or cover hundreds of football fields. At 2 p.m. on March 10th, tephra was still falling. Park rangers helped evacuate visitors from the summit. All trails and viewing spots near the summit were closed. Scientists are keeping an eye on things all day and night, watching how high the lava shoots, how fast it flows, which way the ash cloud is moving, and where the fallout spreads. Even though the lava mostly stays in the crater, tephra and volcanic gases can make living near a volcano pretty risky. Since December 24, 2024, Kilauea has been spitting lava on and off, mostly from 2 vents at the summit crater, one to the north, one to the south. Eruptions happen in short bursts, usually less than half a day. After that, the volcano takes a break for a while. Could we say the volcano is chilling? No, we can't. Sometimes those pauses can last 2 weeks or more, as if giving the lava time to catch its breath before the next show. But let's talk a little bit more about tephra. The biggest problem is that it doesn't just stay near the volcano. In past eruptions, it rained down on neighborhoods as far away as Hilo and Puna, messing up water systems and creating a huge cleanup job. At Hilo International Airport, all evening flights were canceled because of ash in the air. And for weeks afterward, locals and park staff were sweeping tephra off roofs, gutters, streets, just about everywhere you can imagine. According to the park spokesman, the reason tephra spread so far is a mix of weak winds and extremely tall lava fountains. When that happens, the volcanic debris drops straight down over the park and nearby towns. During past eruptions, steady winds, called trade winds, which usually blow from east to west across the islands, acted like a conveyor belt. They carried ash and volcanic gases over the Cow Desert and nearby towns to the southwest. Another super dangerous thing about an eruption is glass rain, also called Pele's hair. It's a kind of tephra that happens especially when lava fountains shoot up really fast. Tiny gas bubbles in the lava burst and stretch the molten rock into super thin, fragile strands. The wind then carries them far away. This stuff is lightweight but brittle, so it can scratch your skin or get in your eyes or lungs. The name comes from Pele, the Hawaiian goddess of fire and volcanoes, because it's kind of born straight from volcanic activity. During big eruptions, like the one in 2018, these strands were reported falling all around the volcano. Now, Kilauea isn't the only threat in the region. The sleeping giant next door, Mauna Loa, got an update from scientists on March 5, 2016. The volcano isn't erupting yet, but it's inflating as magma fills its huge underground chambers. You might think of it like Earth taking a deep breath. But it isn't just breathing. In the past month alone, over 100 earthquakes have been detected under the summit. Should we get worried? Well, let's figure it out. Mauna Loa, the largest active volcano on Earth, covers half of Hawaii's Big Island. Its eruptions can produce huge, fast-moving rivers of lava, like a slow-mo bulldozer made of molten rock moving across the area. When Mauna Loa erupts, it usually starts at the summit. From there, lava can flow into different areas. the Northeast Rift Zone, Southwest Rift Zone, or even vents on the northwest side of the volcano. The most intriguing thing is that these lava flows can appear within minutes, hours, or even months after the eruption begins. Since its first well-recorded eruption in 1843, Mauna Loa has erupted 34 times. The gaps between eruptions can range from just months to many decades. Its most recent eruption was in 2022. Right now, Mauna Loa is quiet but active. Seismic activity, that is, small earthquakes under the volcano, shows that magma is, in fact, moving beneath the surface. In February 2026, scientists detected 116 earthquakes beneath the summit, mostly gathered under the caldera era called Makuaweo Veo. Some were also concentrated in the southern caldera. But don't let this number scare you. For comparison, the month before had 123 earthquakes. The thing is, these quakes are part of the normal breathing of the volcano as it refills with magma after the 2022 eruption. GPS instruments on the volcano indeed show that the summit is inflating, meaning the ground is slowly rising as magma fills the underground reservoir. At the same time, gas and temperature readings from the Southwest Rift Zone are at normal levels, which means no major changes compared to previous months. So even though Mauna Loa is refilling, there's no immediate sign of a new eruption, yet. In any case, Mauna Loa is always worth watching. It's a sleeping giant that can wake at any time, and scientists are keeping a close eye on every inch of rising ground. Because if Mauna Loa erupts, it can cause a ton of different problems. Massive rivers of lava can flow quickly and cover land in their path. The volcano itself can also make the ground shake, because as magma fills it, the sides of the mountain can shift up or sideways, triggering earthquakes. On top of that, Mauna Loa can release volcanic gases that mix with the air and create fog, a kind of smog that can be irritating or even make it hard to breathe for people living downwind. Sometimes, the volcano might even produce small explosions, sending ash into the sky, which can be dangerous for airplanes flying nearby.
For 70,000 years, Taftan volcano successfully convinced everyone it was extinct, but new satellite images show that its summit is rising, like something inside is stretching it, rolling it over, and cracking its neck after the world's longest nap. Scientists aren't too happy about it, so let's see if you have a reason to be worried too. Volcanoes can wake up when earthquakes shake them awake or storms mess with underground water. But scientists checked. There weren't any big earthquakes or heavy rains in southeastern Iran, where it sits. So it must be gas or magma pressure that's moving Taftan. It's like a sealed soda can heating up from the inside. Before you even hear a hiss, the pressure is building silently, waiting for a weakness. That's why Taftan's movement is such a big red flag. Pressure changes mean new internal activity. Plus, the source of pressure below its surface is at just around 1,600 to 2,070 feet deep. And that's not a lot for a volcano. When the source of pressure sits that close to daylight, it can set off small explosions from steam or gas, even if no lava ever touches the surface. This type of explosion, called phreatic, happens when water underground gets so hot so fast that it blows up like a giant pressure cooker. In Hollywood movies, volcanic eruptions always look like rivers of lava chasing people down the street. But steam-driven explosions are different, sneaky, and unpredictable. One minute everything looks calm, and the next minute rocks and superheated steam blast into the air like Earth sneezed with the power of a jet engine. For Taftan, this is exactly the scenario scientists are afraid of. You don't need flowing lava to cause destruction. A steam-driven explosion can launch boulders the size of cars and shoot ash clouds thousands of feet up. Even if you don't live anywhere near Iran, Taftan isn't just a local issue. Volcanoes breathe out gases that travel with the wind, and Taftan produces sulfur-heavy emissions when it's active. Sulfur dioxide doesn't just smell bad, but messes with air quality, irritates lungs and reacts in the atmosphere to form particles that can dim sunlight and cool temperatures. That means neighboring countries might feel the effects even if they never see the volcano. And if a phreatic explosion blasts ash high enough, it could drift into international flight paths like volcanic confetti nobody asked for. Even smaller eruptions can have ripple effects. Remember that time a volcano in Iceland with a name I won't ever pronounce correctly blew up in 2010? It disrupted all the air travel across the Atlantic, and in our case, a modest ash plume drifting into major air corridors could ground flights across the Middle East, South Asia, and beyond. You know, gas emissions don't respect borders. They drift, mix, and settle wherever the wind decides to drop them. Alright, all this sounds pretty creepy, but with all the modern sensors, scientists should find out about an eruption in advance, right? Not really. As Taftan sits in a really remote region, setting up monitoring stations there is tricky, expensive, and frankly, was never a priority because everyone assumed the volcano was done for. So right now, satellites, not ground instruments, are doing most of the work. Satellites see the big picture, but instruments on the mountain add detail. And that's why it was so important for Taftan to be reclassified from extinct to dormant. Because dormant volcanoes need eyes on them 24/7. When a volcano is labeled extinct, countries don't invest in evacuation plans, hazard maps, or monitoring equipment. Changing Taftan's status forced everyone, from local officials to global scientists, to admit it can cause trouble. And that means preparing for ashfall, gas emissions, sudden eruptions, and the long-term questions. Questions like, what if this awakening isn't temporary? What if this is the beginning of a whole new activity cycle? Long-term, Taftan might settle down again, or it might be entering a period of renewed activity. Volcanoes don't run on human timelines. A short-term phase for a volcano could be days or years, and the uplifting summit might mean there's deeper magma movement, not just a surface burp. It has gone up by about 3.5 inches over 10 months between July 2023 and May 2024. And a mountain rising is like Earth inhaling. And if Earth inhales too deeply, it eventually exhales. And in volcanic terms, that exhale is nothing good. Right now, Taftan is breathing in, and nobody knows when it plans to breathe out. This already sounds like too much drama, but there's more where it came from. Some of the biggest, angriest supervolcanoes on Earth are starting to wake up. When one of these monsters erupts, the whole planet feels it, even people living thousands of miles away. Scientists worry because a super eruption could move faster than our ability to prepare food, evacuate cities, or deal with the chaos afterward. That's what makes supervolcanoes so scary. Not just the explosion, but how little time we might have to react. If you live near Naples, you already know at least one supervolcano and how it acts. Streets crack, steam leaks from the earth, the harbor fills with sediment, and swarms of small earthquakes rattle windows like underground thunder. All of that comes from Campi Flegrei, a massive supervolcano caldera that last erupted in 1538. For years, scientists read these signals as classic warnings of magma rising. But two recent studies, one in 2023 and another in 2025, completely changed how we understand what's really going on. And surprisingly, they brought a bit of hope with the danger. In 2023, studies zoomed in on carbon dioxide, a gas volcanoes pump out when magma starts acting up. At Campi Flegrei, CO2 levels jumped after 2005 to about 4,000 to 5,000 tons a day, which sounds like magma rising fast. But when scientists checked other gases like nitrogen and helium, the chemistry didn't fit that idea at all. It turned out that the extra CO2 came not from rising magma, but from super hot fluids underground, cooking the surrounding rocks and releasing gas on their own. In the 2025 study, lab experiments showed that the shaking comes mainly from a sealed underground water and steam reservoir. When that natural lid traps pressure, it eventually cracks and releases steam and sets off sudden quakes that people feel at the surface. That idea also explains something that always confused scientists. The earthquakes usually start close to the surface and then move deeper, which is the opposite of what rising magma would do. After the strongest shaking, the ground often sinks a little, like a balloon slowly deflating after you let some air out. None of this means Campi Flegrei is suddenly safe though. Magma still sits deep underground, and steam-driven explosions can still blast out rocks, ash, and scorching gas without any lava warning you first. What's really changed is how scientists think about the danger. Just watching and waiting isn't enough anymore. If humanity only had 12 months of warning before a supervolcano eruption, we'd struggle badly. Stockpiling food, relocating people, keeping supply chains alive. It would all feel almost impossible. But don't freak out yet, because supervolcano eruptions are extremely rare. The last one happened about 26,500 years ago in New Zealand. On average, scientists think a super eruption happens roughly once every 100,000 years, but Earth doesn't follow neat schedules like a calendar. Sometimes these eruptions cluster closer together, and then the planet stays quiet for a long time. Two massive super eruptions shook the planet within the last 100,000 years. About 74,000 years ago, Indonesia's Toba volcano blew up with such force that it blasted ash across Asia, lowered the temperatures around the world, and may have pushed early humans to the brink of extinction. Then, around 26,500 years ago, New Zealand's Taupo volcano unleashed an eruption, covering huge areas in ash and reshaping the landscape we see today. There's always a chance another super eruption could arrive earlier than we expect. That uncertainty is what keeps scientists awake at night. Clouds of blazing ash obscure the sun. The ground is shaking. People are running in different directions. A volcanic eruption has begun. And it started suddenly. A small, sunny coastal town is facing one of the most devastating natural disasters. The ash will settle. Lava will spill out of the volcano's mouth, and within a few hours, the ancient city of Pompeii will be in… Wait a minute! People get into cars and drive away. This is not Pompeii. This is a modern town. Huh? Is it possible for a city to get buried during an eruption today? Unfortunately, yes. Welcome to Montserrat, which is also called the Pompeii of the Caribbean. Montserrat is not a city. This is the British Overseas Territory in the Lesser Antilles, one of the Caribbean islands. It has the Soufriere Hills volcano that turned the lives of many residents of the capital, Plymouth, into a nightmare in 1995. But what kind of place is this, and why do people live here at all? The Montserrat area is not very big. It's about 6 times smaller than the Chicago area, and there aren't many people living here. Before 1995, the population of Montserrat was about 15,000 inhabitants. It's not a lot, but the island gathered several different cultures, as it was inhabited by the Irish, Africans, and indigenous people. Montserrat is one of the youngest volcanic islands of the Lesser Antilles. Before 1995, the Soufriere Hills volcano erupted here in the 17th century. Many years had passed since then, so people were not very worried about its new awakening. They rested, worked, had fun, went boating to other islands, and all this continued for about 300 years. Then, the serene paradise life ended. In 1995, seismic activity began. It continued for several months and led to an explosive eruption in 1996. Fortunately, no one got hurt. But the real disaster hit in June 1997. Something bad started happening at the top of the Soufriere Hills. At an altitude of about 3,000 feet, the volcano began spitting out ash clouds, rocks, and hot gas, releasing its boiling innards, which were rapidly falling down the steep slope. The locals were terrified. Some people had evacuated from the island by that time. They had to leave their homes and sail away, but some locals stayed and didn't survive. The pyroclastic flow destroyed many buildings, streets, and roads. In case you didn't know, the pyroclastic flow is a dense, thick mix of volcanic ash, lava, and hot gases that moves as an incandescent mass at high speed. It burns and destroys everything in its path. On that day, the pyroclastic flow was moving at 62 miles per hour, with its temperature reaching around 1470 degrees Fahrenheit. Imagine boiling water. Pretty hot, isn't it? And the temperature of that pyroclastic flow was almost 7 times higher. One part of the inhabitants of the island moved to its northern part, and the other migrated to the neighboring islands. Since then, Plymouth has become a ghost town. Thanks to the solidified magma, you can see buildings that seem to have particularly sunk through the ground or are stuck in textures. The streets are deserted, and the roads are covered with a thick layer of volcanic mass. After the eruption, only 1,000 people stayed on the island. There are about 4,500 people living there now, all of them in the northern, safe part. The southern side of the island is now called the exclusion zone. It's divided into 5 parts: A, B, C, F, and V, the most dangerous area. Why is it dangerous? Because the volcano is still active. Periodically, it spits out clouds of ash. It can erupt with devastating force at any moment, but that doesn't stop thrill seekers. Montserrat attracts many tourists who like to walk in the picturesque areas near the active volcano. People also love the ghost town. The roofs of houses, spires, and the remains of the clock tower stick out of the solidified lava. Broken windows with torn curtains and dilapidated former hotels attract many tourists. You can enjoy the beautiful tropical northern part of the island and see the apocalyptic picture in its southern part. Locals actively promote tourism and advertise their home as the Pompeii of the Caribbean. Would you like to visit this place? Living next to a volcano is quite risky, but how about living inside a volcano? Near 220 miles south of Tokyo, there's a beautiful island of Aogashima, most of which is occupied by an active volcano. But how can people live inside a volcano and not be afraid? The answer is simple. This place is too beautiful. Besides, the last major eruption occurred there at the end of the 18th century. People don't live right inside the crater, that would be too much. A small settlement is located inside the outer wall of the crater, far from the geothermal activity and quite far from the dangerous peak. But it's still a pretty extreme place to call home. The population of the island is about 170 people, and they're not going to leave. Here you can find only one shop, one post office, free camping, and a couple of guest houses and 3 bars. It sounds pretty cozy considering that all this is located in a green paradise. But in 1785, this paradise resembled Pompeii during the infamous catastrophe. According to stories and remaining records, the first tremors occurred on May 18 or so. It was a warning of the impending disaster. At that time, 327 residents lived in Aogashima. It's not known whether they attached importance to the small earthquake, but they continued to live peacefully for another couple of weeks. The volcano's activity increased. The disaster was inevitable, so evacuation from the island began on June 4. Unfortunately, it was too late. There were earthquakes, terrible roars, and streams of hot lava that covered trees, roads, and houses. Many didn't survive that day. And still, the descendants of those who escaped from the island that day now reside in Aogashima. Aren't they afraid of another eruption? They look at this situation differently. Nothing can stop nature, so there's no point in resisting. And if there's no eruption, then it's better to enjoy the picturesque views and the relaxed rhythm of the island. Few people live there, and there's almost no urban entertainment, but still, you can find what to do. In the afternoon, You can walk along the Green Mountain Range and enjoy the view of the Philippine Sea. You will feel one with nature, beautiful birds, the warm sun, and the physical exertion of the trip. It will all charge you with energy and inspiration. You can also go fishing, camping, or chat with the locals. At night, you can look at the stars. The night sky is perfect in Aogashima. Away from city lights, there's a low level of light pollution. A detailed star map can help you study celestial bodies without a telescope. Since the place is essentially an active volcano, you can find many geothermal springs there. One of the coolest and most popular places to visit is Aogashima Furiai. It's a sauna that uses volcanic energy to maintain high temperatures in the steam rooms. And outside the rooms, you can also find hot air vents for cooking. How about an omelet fried in volcanic heat? Sounds appealing. Of course, it's quite difficult to get to this place since Aogashima is a very remote island. You first need to get to the nearest larger island, Hachichojima. There are regular flights to it directly from Tokyo. You can also choose a more romantic trip and take an overnight ferry. It's only 2.5 hours by boat between Hachichojima and Aogashima. But if you've spent enough money, you can pay for a helicopter trip and spend a mere 20 minutes to get there. It wouldn't be surprising if you wanted to stay on the island forever after visiting it for the first time. A measured life in nature or the bustle of the concrete jungle? Which one would you choose? But don't forget that at any moment you can feel the ground tremble. But let's hope there won't be any eruptions soon. Stop for a second and look at the ground beneath your feet. Is it a quiet suburban street, a flat basketball court, or maybe a peaceful stretch of farmland? You probably feel safe because there isn't a giant smoking mountain on the horizon. But that safety is an illusion. Yeah, sure. Yellowstone, Vesuvius, or Mount Fuji. Those are the celebrities of the geological world. Giants that dominate the skyline and sometimes blow their tops. But what about a hidden threat? One that doesn't look like a volcano at all. It's invisible, it's silent, and thousands of these traps are scattered across the planet, lurking right under the foundations of our biggest cities. Scientists call them monogenetic volcanic fields. To the untrained eye, they don't look like volcanoes at all. They disguise themselves as innocent hills, flat plains, or just lovely lakes. For decades, they were mainly ignored because of their small size. But new data suggests these hidden systems are far more dangerous than previously thought. And unlike the big giants that give weeks of warning rumbles, these invisible volcanoes specialize in surprise attacks. Hold tight. To understand the danger, we have to look at the plumbing. A standard volcano acts like a simple chimney. There is a central magma chamber and a main pipe leading to the surface. Eruption after eruption, lava flows out the same vent, building a massive cone over thousands of years. Monogenetic fields break all these rules. They don't build mountains. They don't reuse the same pipe. Instead of a chimney, imagine a cracked windshield. Magma deep underground scans for any weakness in the crust over a massive area. It pushes up, cracks the surface, erupts once, usually violently, and then calms down forever. The next time magma rises, it won't use that old vent. It will find a new crack 5 miles away, or 10. This means you can't just monitor one specific mountain. The entire region is a danger zone. And because each volcano is a one-and-done event, the landscape is deceptive. You could drive past a site of a violent ancient explosion every day on your way to work and simply see a grassy knoll. The scary part is the speed. In these fields, magma can rocket from 30 miles down to the surface in less than 24 hours. It moves at a speed of up to 4 miles per hour. That sounds slow for a car, but for melting rocks, that is the speed of an elevator. This isn't just a theoretical problem for empty deserts. Take Auckland, New Zealand. It's a stunning modern city with beautiful harbors and over 1 million residents. But Auckland is built directly on top of a geological minefield. Sounds a bit crazy, right? Beneath rugby stadiums, parks, and busy intersections lies the Auckland Volcanic Field. Those scenic green hills scattered across the city aren't just landscaping. They're the remains of over 53 separate volcanic eruptions. Rangitoto Island, which sits just offshore, emerged from the ocean only 600 years ago. In geological time, that was 5 minutes ago. For years, this field was considered sleepy, but recently, scientists have started noticing subtle changes. The terrifying reality of a field like this isn't that a volcano we already know will erupt again. It's that a new one can pop up and go from zero to a disaster in the blink of an eye. A bubble of magma could rise silently beneath a factory, a highway interchange, or a residential neighborhood. There is no designated safe zone because the threat is spread across the entire city map. History gives us a brutal example of how fast this happens. In 1943, a farmer named Dionisio Pulido was plowing his cornfield in Mexico, on the outskirts of Mexico City. It was a normal Tuesday. Suddenly, the ground cracked open right in front of him. Smoke hissed out, smelling of rotten eggs. Within 24 hours, that small crack in a flat field had transformed into a raging volcano 160 feet tall. Within a week, it stood 500 feet high. This was the birth of Paricutin. It wiped out 2 entire towns, leaving only the stone steeple of a church poking out of the hardened lava, a haunting monument that still stands today. This geological nightmare started in a simple cornfield, and it wasn't an isolated incident. Look at the Harat Rahat field in Saudi Arabia. In 1256, a massive fissure opened up near the city of Medina. It spewed lava for 52 days, creating a river of fire 14 miles long. Today, that same volcanic field is still there, and modern Medina has expanded right on top of the ancient lava flows. Now, apply that same story to a suburb of Los Angeles, a district in Tokyo, or a neighborhood in Europe. In a matter of days, an entire city can be buried under ash. The risk is global, ranging from over 1,800 vents in the American Southwest to the restless Eifel region in Germany and similar fields in China. Experts warn that the real risk here isn't size, but frequency and location. These volcanoes tend to be explosive. When magma rises rapidly and hits groundwater, which is common under cities and fertile farmland, it flashes into steam. This creates a phreatomagnetic explosion. Instead of a slow, oozing river of lava that people can walk away from, the ground acts like a shotgun blast. It sends a massive column of ash and rock shooting into the atmosphere. In our modern world, this is a recipe for chaos. We rely on delicate systems, air travel, GPS signals, just-in-time supply chains. You don't need a supervolcano to crash the global economy. A small eruption near a major logistics hub is enough. Remember the 2010 eruption in Iceland? That wasn't even a big explosion by historical standards. Yet, the ash cloud grounded over 100,000 flights, and 10 million passengers were stranded. Volcanic ash melts inside jet engines, while toxic dust poisons crops and contaminates water reservoirs with heavy metals. It creates a domino effect. One small eruption in the wrong place triggers a cascading failure of global infrastructure. And the most alarming part is that the signals are already there. Recent geological studies have shown an uptick in activity in these distributed fields. It isn't always violent earthquakes. Often, it's bradyseism, the slow rhythmic breathing of the ground. We mentioned the Eifel region of Germany, where GPS data shows the land is rising by about 0.04 inches per year. It sounds tiny, but for geologists, that is a proper red flag. Scientists are detecting slight swells in the Earth's crust and weird spikes in carbon dioxide emissions in places that should be quiet. Magma is moving, but because these systems are so spread out, monitoring them is a nightmare. We have sensors all over Yellowstone. We watch Vesuvius 24/7, but almost no one is watching a random patch of desert in Arizona or a forest floor in Germany. These invisible volcanoes are poorly studied. We lack the baseline data to know if a tremor is just a truck driving by or the start of a Paricutin-style event. This lack of data means that when an eruption starts, authorities might have almost zero warning. In a polygenetic volcano, the mountain swells for months. In a monogenetic field, magma can shoot from the deep mantle to the surface in hours. By the time the evacuation order is written, the lava could already be breaking through the pavement. It isn't that hard to imagine the logistical nightmare. A city not known for volcanoes suddenly receives an alert. a vent is forming downtown. It sounds impossible. People delay leaving. They grab their phones to film the smoke. Then, explosions start. The ash creates a blackout. Power grids fail as wet ash shorts out transformers. Roads gridlock instantly. This scenario isn't science fiction. It's exactly what hazard models predict for places like the Auckland Volcanic Field or parts of the Trans-Mexican Volcanic Belt. We are building denser and denser cities on top of geological landmines. This doesn't mean we need to start digging bunkers, but it does require a shift in perspective. We have spent so much time worrying about the celebrity volcanoes that we forgot about the quiet ones. The Earth is a living, shifting engine that doesn't care about property lines or city limits. Scientists are now pushing for better monitoring networks, using satellites to track even the tiniest ground deformation in these boring, flat fields. Because the only way to survive a surprise attack is to see it coming before the ground cracks open. Peace and quiet on the surface doesn't always mean peace and quiet underneath. The Earth has plenty of secrets left, and some of them are just waiting for the right moment to surface. Yellowstone is the internet's favorite doomsday volcano. Maybe you heard the prediction. One super eruption, then a continent dusted in ash and temperatures going down. A perfect disaster movie scenario. Yet, geologists worry about a different kind of volcano. One that won't explode only once. It could rip the ground open, flood the entire continent with lava, and make the air unbreathable. And we know this because it happened before. Right now, researchers think there might be around 20 supervolcanoes scattered across the planet. Short story, we fear those. Long story, a major supervolcanic eruption could collapse modern society as we know it. A normal volcano can cause a local disaster. It can wipe out a city and turn a region into a no-travel zone. When Mount St. Helens exploded in 1980, it was huge. The eruption blew the top off a mountain and flattened forests like knocking down dominoes. It showed the world just how scary volcanoes can be. But in geological terms, it's nowhere near what a supervolcano could do. Mount St. Helens threw out roughly a third of a cubic mile of ash, enough to make a football field pile about 150 miles high. For comparison, a supervolcano could bury the entire state of Texas 5 feet deep, and Texas stretches about 800 miles. Volcanoes like St. Helens are mountains that build up over time, layer after layer, like nature stacking spilled wax. They erupt, they cool, they erupt again, and you end up with a cone that looks cool in photos. A supervolcano is like a hidden pit. It resembles a giant underground tank of molten rock covered in a thick slab of crust. Imagine the magma chamber like a huge underground room, and the ground above it is the ceiling. During a super eruption, cracks rip open across that ground and magma forces its way up through them, like steam blasting out of a pressure cooker. Ash and gas roar high into the sky. It can start in multiple spots across a wide area, not one neat hole. The magma chamber underneath can empty so violently that the roof above it collapses, the land drops, and what's left is a massive bowl-shaped scar called a caldera. And Yellowstone is the prime example. About 631,000 years ago, Yellowstone had a massive eruption and it left behind a giant caldera about 30 by 45 miles across. Now it's a national park, but it's also basically a footprint, like a warning. If Yellowstone erupted again, the first super hot clouds of ash and gas could blast outward and burn everything nearby. Then the ash would spread. And ash is not like the fireplace dust. It hurts to breathe. It wrecks engines, and it can shut down flights and machines. Regular volcanoes mostly hit the area around them with lava. A super eruption turns the air itself into a real danger. Ash spreads far and jams the things we depend on. High up, sulfur can turn into a thin haze that will block some sunlight. That can cool things for a while and mess with growing seasons, even far from the eruption. And winds can spread that effect well beyond the US. However, geologists worry about something even worse. a kind of eruption that can keep going in waves and cover huge regions in lava. It's called a large igneous province. It's not one volcano, it's a whole stretch of crust that starts leaking lava through long cracks over and over for a long time. Instead of one giant explosion, it's more like Earth turning on a lava faucet that just keeps going. Imagine a crack in the ground hundreds of miles long. Out of that crack comes a sea of lava, but this isn't the sticky, slow stuff you see in Hawaii. This is hot, runny, fast-moving lava, and it doesn't stop. It spreads, floods low spots, stacks into layers, and then does it again. And that's what makes LIPs scarier than a supervolcano. They drag on. They can erupt in repeated pulses over hundreds of thousands to a few million years. We have scars to prove it right here in the US. About 17 million years ago, the Pacific Northwest ripped open and created the Columbia River basalt. Lava did not just coat the land, it drowned it. The total amount that erupted was around 42,000 cubic miles. That's enough to cover the whole US in lava about 58 feet deep. But how can Earth produce enough lava to bury a mountain range? It's because the planet is still churning inside. Imagine Earth like a pot of thick tomato soup sitting on a stove. Earth's core is the stove, and it's extremely hot. The soup is the mantle, a thick layer of rock that moves slowly. Now and then, a massive blob of superheated rock rises from deep in the mantle, possibly from the boundary above the core. Scientists call this a mantle plume. When it reaches the cooler crust, it spreads out, pushes upward, and when it breaks through, it does not build one neat mountain. It can open long cracks and feed eruptions in repeated bursts for a very long time. However, while lava burns everything in its way, it's not what wrecks the planet. The gas does. These eruptions release huge amounts of carbon dioxide and sulfur, and we can assume the consequences of that because it happened before, and not just once. About 252 million years ago, a massive LIP eruption began in what is now Siberia. It lines up with the worst extinction event in Earth's history, the Great Dying. Around 90% of species disappeared. Huge amounts of gas flooded the air and trapped heat. The ocean soaked up some of that gas and turned more acidic. Acid rain fell again and again. Life on Earth crashed. Scientists believe that in the last 500 million years, there have been 16 major extinctions like this, and that 15 of them line up closely with LIP timing. These geological formations changed Earth so many times, and scientists now wonder, what if Yellowstone and that massive lava flood in Oregon are actually a part of the same system? Look at Idaho from space, and you see a long, flat track across the state called the Snake River Plain. It points from the old lava flood region toward Yellowstone, like a trail. That path exists because Earth's surface moves. The outer layer is split into giant plates that slowly slide. Under Idaho and Yellowstone, a deep, hot zone keeps feeding eruptions. As the plate moves, the eruption zone shifts with it, leaving a long trail behind. That's why the rocks get older the farther you go from Yellowstone. It's the same heat source, just a moving target. And if you roll the plate's motion back far enough, that trail points closer to where the Columbia River basalts formed. That's why some geologists think the Northwest lava flood and Yellowstone could be connected parts of one long-lived system. Finally, if it's all part of one big apocalyptic system, is it time to pack the bags and flee to Mars? Will it happen again soon? Even if they share the same story, that does not mean the worst part is coming back soon. The lava flood chapter played out millions of years ago. Today, Yellowstone is simply where that deep heat shows up at the moment. And sure, it can erupt again, but the most likely eruption isn't some giant doomsday blast. It's a steam explosion, when super hot water flashes into steam and blows rock apart. Lava flows and smaller eruptions can happen too. The caldera-making nightmare is a rare one. If Yellowstone ever started building towards something big, it wouldn't be sneaky. You would see it coming. A lot more earthquakes than normal and the ground lifting faster than usual. The clearest right before signs would likely show up in the days or weeks before it. We cannot stop a planet-scale eruption. We can only watch for the warning signs and plan. But hopefully, if the planet decides to get rid of us, by the time it starts sending warnings, we'll already finish turning Mars into our new home.
It's the 15th of January, 2022, 4:47 p.m. local time. It will start any moment. Here, do you feel these jolts? The South Pacific is about to experience one of the most powerful volcanic eruptions ever recorded by modern instruments. The eruption begins at Hunga Tonga Hunga Ha'api, an underwater volcano in the Tongan archipelago. The eruption itself is enormous. Its volcanic explosivity index is at least VEI 5, with the maximum being 8. It's as powerful as such historic catastrophes as Mount St. Helens in 1980 and Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE. The eruption releases a staggering 2.4 cubic miles of volcanic material and sends over 150 million tons of water vapor into the stratosphere. This amount of water vapor would have been enough to fill 58,000 Olympic swimming pools. Additionally, the eruption generates the fastest underwater currents ever recorded and triggers large tsunamis that struck areas as far as Peru, more than 6,200 miles away from the volcano. And it takes at least 4 lives, with even more missing. But the craziest thing is that just before the eruption, 15 minutes ahead of time, there was a kind of warning. But as it often happens, people simply missed them. 2 seismic stations, about 466 miles away from the volcano, which is pretty far for this kind of thing, picked it up. They figured out it was a Rayleigh wave, which is a type of seismic wave that moves along Earth's surface. This wave was caused by a fracture in the ocean floor, where magma and seawater started to interact under a lot of pressure. That's likely what triggered the eruption. The crazy thing is that normally, volcanic seismic signals are pretty small and can only be detected close to the volcano. But this Rayleigh wave traveled way farther than usual and was much stronger. It means there had to be a massive amount of movement going on beneath the surface before the eruption. While people on the ground didn't feel it, those distant sensors picked it up. And this discovery is great for identifying volcanic threats earlier in the future and for improving early warning systems. If scientists can detect these seismic precursors, they could give a heads up before an eruption happens. That would give people time to evacuate and reduce the chances of injuries or property damage, especially for underwater volcanoes like this one, which can also trigger fatal tsunamis. Now, the eruption was big, but its impact was mostly contained. However, this discovery underlines how important seismic data is for predicting and preparing for these disasters. Even though this precursor wasn't used to issue a warning during this eruption, the idea that we could use this kind of information in real time during future eruptions is really promising, especially for underwater eruptions, which apparently might give us more warning time than we thought. Even though we wouldn't have been able to hear that precursor warning signal, there is a sound so loud it could actually finish you. And while such sounds are incredibly rare, the loudest noise ever recorded was indeed fatal to those who were close enough. On 27 August 1883, the eruption of the Krakatoa volcano in Indonesia created the loudest noise ever measured. It's thought to have been an astonishing 310 decibels at the source. To put this in perspective, a hand drill produces the sound of 98 decibels. The noise produced by a jet engine measures 140 decibels. And the sound of 180 decibels is capable of destroying your hearing tissue. So, the sound Krakatoa produced reached more than 170 decibels at a distance of 100 miles. And sailors aboard a ship just 40 miles from the eruption had their eardrums burst from the sound. The explosion's reverberation was so powerful that it was heard 3,000 miles away, In fact, at a farm in Alice Springs, Australia, over 2,200 miles away, sheep farmers reported hearing what they thought were gunshots. The sound from Krakatoa traveled around the world multiple times. Although no one heard the explosion beyond 3,000 miles, spikes of atmospheric pressure were recorded in places as far away as Canada and England. Those must have been the sound waves produced by the eruption traveling around the globe. Sound above 150 decibels can potentially cause life-threatening harm. In particular, sounds between 170 and 200 decibels can result in lethal conditions, including burst lungs. Anything over 240 decibels could cause fatal injuries, and you don't even want to know what those are. I'll just say that those sometimes happen to cartoon characters, but rarely to people. The scientific explanation behind this is that sound is essentially a wave of pressure, which can travel through both solids and liquids. And, in the case of an incredibly loud sound, pass right through the human body. If the pressure from such a sound is high enough, it can rupture eardrums and internal organs, causing significant and often fatal damage. Now, you probably know how volcanoes sometimes have small earthquakes before they erupt. Well, they often produce this weird sound called a harmonic tremor. The sound kind of hums, and the frequency of the hum gets higher and higher until it suddenly stops just before the volcano erupts. The sound has been recorded at a bunch of volcanoes around the world. But the thing about Redoubt Volcano in Alaska is that its tremor is so intense, people can actually hear it. It's like the volcano is letting out this crazy scream right before the eruption. According to a geophysicist at the University of Washington, the frequency of Redoubt's harmonic tremor is so high that it is barely perceptible as a low bass hum, and that's at its highest pitch. All because the pitch of Redoubt's tremor exceeds that of any other recorded volcano. It questions the limits of the existing models used to explain these phenomena. That's why researchers had to propose a new model to account for these unusually high-pitched tremors. Most volcanoes produce sound when magma bubbles vibrate as they rise through cracks in Earth's crust. But in the case of Redoubt, scientists believe that the harmonic tremor and associated earthquakes occur when magma is forced through a narrow opening under immense pressure. The thick magma sticks to the rock surface inside the conduit, a channel or a pipe that carries magma from a reservoir or chamber to the vent. As the pressure builds, the magma moves upward. This makes it stick again until the pressure forces it to move once more. These sudden movements cause small earthquakes, which, as the pressure increases, occur more rapidly and blend into a continuous rising noise. So it's actually the rocks making the sounds. This new model is important because it could help scientists better understand the eruptive cycles of volcanoes like Redoubt. It could also serve as a limited early warning system. By the time Redoubt began to scream like this, the volcano had already been erupting for a few days. So the tremor might only provide a few minutes or hours of warning before the next explosion. The harmonic tremor at Redoubt reaches an extremely high frequency, then falls eerily silent before the volcano erupts again. This pause occurs when the earthquake activity slows down and the two sides of the fault slip smoothly against one another. Maybe that's when even earthquakes can't keep up anymore. The new model may also apply to other volcanoes, such as the Soufriere Hills volcano on the Caribbean island of Montserrat. The research team is now planning to investigate why the pressure at Redoubt is concentrated in one specific spot. To move ahead in their research, the scientists have created 2 recordings of Redoubt's seismic activity. The first, a 10-second recording, compresses about 10 minutes of seismic sounds and harmonic tremors, sped up 60 times. The second, a 1-minute recording, condenses roughly an hour of activity, including more than 1,600 small earthquakes that had occurred before Redoubt's first explosion with harmonic tremor. These recordings could provide crucial insight into the dynamics of volcanic eruptions and the signals that precede them.
Our planet's biggest and meanest supervolcanoes are waking up. When they erupt, you'll surely notice it, even if you live thousands of miles away from the epicenter. Scientists are worried we might not have enough time to prepare and deal with the consequences of a super eruption. There's some volcanic activity close to the Italian city of Naples. And no, it has nothing to do with the famous Mount Vesuvius, but with another volcano. This one is harder to see as it doesn't have a tall peak like Vesuvius. But don't let this bad guy trick you. It could be way more dangerous than its giant neighbor. It does have a huge crater that's about 8 miles wide. This volcano is called Campi Flegrei, and it's actually one of the largest volcanoes in Europe, sitting under the town of Pasquale. So, Campi Flegrei erupted 39,000 years ago with a bang so massive it spread ash across the whole Mediterranean region. It also caused the temperature to drop by over 16 degrees Fahrenheit across Eastern Europe. It was the biggest volcanic eruption in Europe in 200,000 years. Since then, Campi Flegrei has had smaller eruptions, and the last one happened in 1538. Now the area is full of small craters, hot springs, and bubbling pools, and they're all proof that this volcano is still very much alive and brewing something. Since the early 2000s, the ground in the giant crater and the town nearby have been slowly rising by about 1 to 1.5 inches every year. There were at least 150 earthquakes that shook this supervolcano lately. In May 2024, there was a 4.4 magnitude in the area, the biggest in the last 40 years. Residents had to leave their homes and camp outside, fearing there would be more earthquakes. No one knows how Campi Flegrei is going to behave in the following months or years, but the authorities are organizing evacuation exercises to prepare the population just in case. The Italian volcano looks like an innocent kitten compared to the real giants like Yellowstone. For a volcano to deserve the title of a super one, it must be able to produce catastrophic-scale eruptions and eject huge amounts of magma, ash, and volcanic gases. The Yellowstone giant meets these criteria. Even though it moves from time to time, the Yellowstone supervolcano hasn't erupted for 640,000 years. But when it does wake up, it might erupt with incredible power, about the same amount as 10 huge nuclear power stations can produce. Under the ground, beneath Yellowstone, there's a super hot area full of molten rock called magma. As more magma moves into a big space called a magma chamber, the ground above starts to swell or rise. When the magma cools down, the ground falls. Between 2004 and 2009, the ground at Yellowstone rose by almost 10 inches, but then it started to slowly go back down in 2010. Scientists aren't sure if it's going to erupt anytime soon. There's also another big volcano called Long Valley in California that has been active since 1980, and it can be a really big threat. Scientists studying this supervolcano found out that before its biggest eruption, 760,000 years ago, the buildup may have taken less than a year. Now, that's bad news, because a supervolcano eruption can have a huge effect on the world, like the eruption of the Toba volcano in Sumatra around 74,000 years ago. It became the biggest volcanic eruption the Earth had seen in 28 million years. It covered parts of Indonesia, India, and the Indian Ocean with a thick layer of volcanic debris, almost like a 6-inch blanket. The amount of rock it spewed out was like stacking nearly 3 million Empire State Buildings. The giant crater it left behind can still be seen from space. All the ash and gases shot up into the air and blocked some of the sunlight. It caused a volcanic winter that lasted about 6 to 10 years. Some scientists think this eruption might have even affected early humans. Around the time Toba erupted, the human population took a sharp dip, and there were far fewer people. Some say this is why all modern humans come from a small group of survivors. According to the Toba catastrophe theory, most early humans in Europe and Asia didn't survive the cold and harsh climate after the eruption, but a lucky group lived through all that in Africa. Not all scientists agree with this idea, and some archaeological and climate records show a different story. Another volcano that changed the world in a big way was Mount Tambora in 1815. The next year went down in history as the year without a summer. It was cold and rainy, and there was snow and frost even in the middle of summer, especially in Europe and North America. This happened because the volcano sent out a lot of sulfur dioxide into the sky, which spread all over the world and made the planet colder. When Tambora erupted, it caused huge tsunamis that smashed homes and took the lives of around 10,000 people. Afterward, about 80,000 more people passed away because of the consequences the eruption had caused in the world. The cold weather ruined crops, so food became really expensive. And because horses were the main way people traveled, the cost of oats that they ate went way up too. Some people even think this led to the invention of the bicycle in 1817 as a new way to get around. The eruption made the Earth colder for about 3 years. Now, even though the Tambora eruption was so powerful, Krakatoa, another volcano in Indonesia, stole the show when it erupted in 1883. It was just easier to spread information about it through telegrams and photos. Its final blast was the loudest recorded sound in history, and people could hear it on 10% of the entire Earth's surface. The eruption started a tsunami with waves about half as tall as the Statue of Liberty. Now, if we only had 12 months to prepare for a supervolcano eruption, it would be really hard to store enough food and get ready. But don't panic just yet. Supervolcano eruptions are very rare, and the last one happened 26,500 years ago in New Zealand. Scientists think that a super eruption happens once every 100,000 years on average. But the sad part here is that the Earth doesn't follow a perfect timeline. There could be clusters of super eruptions with shorter gaps between them and then longer quiet periods. Since there have already been 2 super eruptions in the last 100,000 years, there's always a chance one could happen again sooner than we expect. Plus, although there are places like Yellowstone and Long Valley where we expect volcanoes to erupt, there are less obvious possible hotspots. In Chile, there's a volcano called Laguna del Maule that has erupted in the past and left behind a huge crater. Over the last 20 years, the ground there has been swelling really fast, rising up to almost 1 foot a year. Some people are worried that this could be a sign of a big eruption coming. But scientists say there's not enough magma yet to cause a super eruption. In Bolivia, the Juturancu volcano is also acting up. It's part of a group of volcanoes that have caused super eruptions in the past. Since the 1960s, the ground around Juturancu has been lifting, but the last eruption was 250,000 years ago. Even though the magma might be rising, it's not enough to worry about just yet. The chances of a super eruption happening during our lifetime are 1 in 1,400, which is pretty low, so you don't need to worry too much. But just like someone wins the lottery every week with very small chances, a super eruption could happen sometime in the future, and when it does, we'll need to be prepared.
The ground suddenly starts shaking. Clouds of gas start forming in the sky, making it dark during broad daylight. Bits of the ground start swelling, lifting, and even collapsing. These are the telltale signs of a volcano that is bound to erupt. And this is what could easily happen again with Mount Spur. It's only about 75 miles from Anchorage, one of Alaska's busiest cities. More than half of the population of the northernmost state of the US live there. There's also a huge amount of air cargo that passes through its international airport daily. So anytime a volcano this close to such a vital hub begins to get restless, people start paying attention. Just FYI, approximately 350 million people in the world live within the danger range of an active volcano. That means that around 1 out of 20 people live in an area at risk of volcanic activity. Alaskans probably wish that Spur's reawakening was fiction, but it's actually true. The Alaska Volcano Observatory picked up on several of these "I'm about to erupt" signs from Mount Spur. So much so that they raised the alert level to yellow, which means unrest above normal background levels. Spur erupted twice in the 90s, and it was pretty intense. If we were ranking volcanic eruptions on a scale from 1 to 10, these eruptions would rank a 6 or 7. Not that terrible, but still worth 10 to 17 million in damages. However, these numbers are nothing compared to Alaska's 1988 Redoubt eruption, another volcano that erupted and summed up a staggering $345 million in damages. mainly because its ashes hit aircraft engines, such as the KLM 747 that lost power after all its engines went off due to the ashes. If people weren't paying attention to Alaska's unstable geology before that, well, they surely started to after it. When you think of the hazards of volcanic activity, the first thing that might possibly pop in your mind is Pompeii, Italy. Of course, that's the worst-case scenario, a city being engulfed by lava. Spur may seem innocent compared to Vesuvio, but it still took its toll. The last time it erupted in the 90s, and it threw volcanic aerosols over 60,000 feet into the atmosphere. Let's get our science straight here. Think of volcanic aerosols like liquid particles that are released into the atmosphere during an eruption. These particles are usually created when gases from a volcano, such as sulfur dioxide, combine with water and other particles that exist in our atmosphere. These aerosols can actually cool the Earth's surface since they reflect sunlight directly back into space. And that's not the worst part. It can stay in the atmosphere for several years after an eruption, causing lots of health issues. The eruption unleashed blazing fast avalanches of hot gas and ash called pyroclastic flows, along with thick, muddy floods known as lahars. Oh, and there were also the massive volcanic boulders. These rock chunks were huge, some over 3 feet long, and they blasted out from the volcano like nature's cannonballs, landing more than 6 miles away. All that volcanic heat melted part of a nearby glacier, kicking off debris flows that dammed up the Chakachatna River and created a whole new lake along the valley. Some good came out of Spur's first eruption, though. The main lesson was, volcanic monitoring pays off. The local monitoring was able to reduce the economic damage done by the eruption, especially for a city that has an intense air traffic. Spur is deemed as dormant for the moment, but it could go off anytime soon. You see, volcanoes are classified as active, dormant, or extinct, depending on how much action they're putting on. If it's still active, it's still rumbling and erupting somewhat regularly. Dormant means it's had some recent activity, but it's still lying low for now. And extinct, that's when it's been quiet for such a long time that we figure it's done for good. One of the US's most dangerous active volcanoes is Mount St. Helens. This volcano is actually responsible for the most powerful eruption in US history. Its last blast was so intense, it threw off about 1,300 feet off its summit. Basically, the top of the mountain vanished, and if you thought Mount Spur's ash cloud was impressive, St. Helens wins the competition since it launched its ashes 80,000 feet into the sky. Eastern Washington plunged into total darkness. But it wasn't just that. In a matter of 3 minutes, the eruption hurled 3.7 billion cubic yards of blazing rock and dust, enough to fill 1 million Olympic-sized pools across 230 square miles of lush forest. Actually, the earthquakes that anticipated the eruption started weeks before May 18, 1980. A ground shake of magnitude 5.0 went off, triggering a landslide on one side of the volcano. By the end of the official eruption date, 57 people had lost their lives. Nearly 7,000 big game animals like deer and elk were wiped out, and millions of birds laid scattered on the burnt earth. Researchers don't think St. Helens will blow at the same magnitude again anytime soon, but they're keeping an eye on it, because this volcano is not exactly finished. By the way, the word volcano comes from the Roman name Vulcan, which was the Roman deity of fire, and they often happen at the meeting point of tectonic plates, which are the pieces of the Earth's surface that fit together like a jigsaw puzzle. The so-called Ring of Fire, located in the Pacific Ocean, is the world's danger zone when it comes to volcanoes. It contains between 750 and 915 active volcanoes. The largest volcano located in the Ring of Fire, also the largest active volcano in the world, is the Mauna Loa. It's over 13,000 feet high, and it's located in Hawaii. Researchers say that Mauna Loa has been erupting for at least 700,000 years. Its most recent eruption began on the 27th of November 2022, and it lasted until December 13th. It's been quiet since the 80s until it decided to wake up again. Thanks to constant monitoring by the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory, it didn't cause any casualties when it last erupted. Scientists have been investing big time on volcanic monitoring, not only to reduce economic hazards, but also to save lives. The most recent attempt has been to drill into volcanoes. Recently, a group of scientists went all the way to Iceland in one of the world's volcanic hotspots. There are around 33 active volcanoes in Iceland alone, but the one that is the most interesting to them the most is the Krafla volcano. The Krafla has erupted around 30 times in the last 1,000 years, and its most recent eruption was in the mid-1980s. The project named Krafla Magma Testbed, or KMT for short, is hoping to advance the understanding of how magma behaves underground. The main advantage of this drilling research is predicting the risk of eruptions, but it can also help to push geothermal energy forward. I mean, can you imagine having electricity that is run by the limitless source of volcano power? The KMT team will begin drilling holes deep into volcanic ground in 2027. They're aiming at reaching over a mile into the ground. After all, it's different to monitor lava activity when it's on the surface than when it is still below ground. This will allow researchers to listen to the pulse of the Earth, according to them. They're saying this research is as revolutionary as the first time man went to the moon. Oh, and speaking of that, I was shocked to discover that volcanoes exist all throughout the solar system. Yep, other planets and moons have volcanoes too. The largest volcano in our solar system is Olympus Mons on Mars. It's a shield volcano, much like the ones that make up the Hawaiian Islands. It's about 370 miles wide. If we transported it all the way back to Earth, it would almost occupy all of Poland. Yikes.
Something enormous is hiding right below Hawaii, deeper than any drill could ever reach. This strange underground bubble, almost 1,800 miles down, tells us impressive new details about the formation of the islands and could cause an eruption that will affect thousands of lives. Scientists call strange formations like this blob ultra-low velocity zones. When earthquakes happen, they send vibrations through the planet, and they move fast through most rocks, but they slow way down when they pass through certain deep layers. That slowdown tells geologists something unusual sits there. The giant blob beneath Hawaii belongs to the biggest category of these structures, a mega ultra-low velocity zone, a massive chunk of material sitting right on the border between Earth's mantle and its core. To find out what this monster actually looks like, scientists track two different types of earthquake waves. The first type, pressure waves, compresses rock like squeezing a spring. Another type, shear waves, moves rock up and down like shaking a rope. When they combined both signals, researchers built a much clearer picture of what lies deep below Hawaii. Scientists used to think that this blob was soft and partially melted, like thick lava slowly rising toward the surface. But this new seismic data showed that the blob isn't gooey at all. It's mostly solid rock, dense, heavy, and packed with iron. This discovery helps explain a real mystery that puzzled scientists for decades. Most volcanoes form along the edges of tectonic plates, but Hawaii doesn't sit anywhere near one of those boundaries. It floats right in the middle of the Pacific Plate. Yet the islands somehow form from some of the most active volcanoes on the planet. They used to explain this with a hot spot, a column of heat rising from deep inside the Earth like a blowtorch slowly melting its way upward. But now, it turns out that the giant iron-rich blob anchors that heat plume in place, like the base of a lava lamp that keeps the flow steady for millions of years. The material the structure is made of could even be leftovers from a basal magma ocean, a gigantic layer of molten rock that may have existed deep inside Earth when the planet first formed. When that ancient ocean cooled and crystallized, heavy elements like iron sank downward and created dense pockets, and the blob under Hawaii might be one of those survivors. Now, structures like this don't just sit quietly forever. Heat constantly flows through Earth's mantle, and when those flows shift, they can tug on deep structures, redirect heat, and sometimes destabilize them. If the system beneath Hawaii ever changes in a major way, it could intensify the volcanic activity above. We already see hints of that restless energy. Hawaii has thousands of earthquakes every year. Most of them are tiny, so small that only sensitive instruments detect them. On average, Hawaii has about 100 magnitude 3 earthquakes per year. Those are strong enough for people to feel. Roughly 10 quakes reach magnitude 4 annually, and about 1 magnitude 5 quake shakes the islands every year. Bigger events happen less often, but they still happen. Most of this activity is going on around the Big Island, which has several volcanoes. In early March 2026, Kilauea launched fountains of lava nearly 1,300 feet into the air. Bright red streams of molten rock blasted upward, and ash and volcanic fragments rained down across nearby areas. Authorities temporarily closed parts of Hawaii Volcanoes National Park and sections of Highway 11 because falling debris created dangerous conditions. The eruption didn't threaten homes directly, but it still caused real problems. Ash drifted across nearby communities, and tiny rock fragments coated roads and rooftops. All that activity connects to the same deep engine, the hotspot anchored by that enormous iron-rich blob nearly 1,800 miles beneath the islands. Now, let's travel north, where something pretty scary lurks beneath the western edge of North America. Something capable of reshaping the entire coastline. Scientists think that two giant earthquake faults, the Cascadia subduction zone and the San Andreas fault, don't just exist side by side, but may actually affect each other and act like giant dominoes. Cascadia stretches along the Pacific Northwest, and the San Andreas cuts through California. Scientists found evidence for this possible impact on the ocean floor. They pulled long cylinders of mud and sediment, and these cores are like geological history books that preserve layers of debris from ancient earthquakes. Inside those layers, researchers saw that pairs of earthquake deposits sit almost on top of each other. Geologists call them doublets. Two massive quakes struck so close together in time that the ocean barely had time to settle between them. And that discovery points straight to one of the most chaotic tectonic zones on the planet, the Mendocino Triple Junction. This is where three tectonic plates collide and grind together, like crooked gears inside a machine. It's also the exact place where the San Andreas Fault meets the Cascadia subduction zone. Now, when one fault ruptures, it sends shockwaves of stress through the crust. That stress can destabilize the neighboring fault and push it toward breaking too. A Cascadia megaquake alone could reach magnitude 9 or higher. That kind of earthquake could tear open 600 to 700 miles of seafloor and send a massive tsunami racing toward the Pacific coast. And if Cascadia ruptures first, the shifting stress might trigger the San Andreas shortly afterward. In the worst-case scenario, people in California could feel one enormous quake, watch buildings sway and highways break apart, and then see a second disaster just minutes later. And the opposite sequence could happen too. The San Andreas could snap first, redistribute pressure through the crust, and nudge Cascadia to failure. In this case, people living in the affected area might survive the first quake and then see the ocean suddenly pull away from the shoreline. And that's the chilling signal that a tsunami could arrive in about 20 minutes. Scientists know from analyzing the sediment that this sequence has happened before. There were at least 10 paired earthquakes over the past 3,100 years. The scariest part is that a new massive earthquake isn't about if, it's strictly about when. Now let's jump across the Atlantic to southern Italy. Just west of Naples, there's a massive volcanic system called the Campi Flegrei caldera. It means something like burning fields, and it earned that title honestly. About 109,000 years ago, a huge eruption blasted ash and rock across the region. It removed more than 36 cubic miles of magma from beneath the surface. It's a volume close to the massive eruption that formed the Campi Flegrei caldera around 40,000 years ago. That earlier eruption carved a crater about 9 miles wide and spread volcanic ash across huge parts of Europe. Today, more than 400,000 people live directly inside that ancient crater. The soil there feels incredibly fertile because crops have grown on broken-down volcanic ash for centuries. But the same geology that makes the land productive also hides enormous energy underground. Researchers recently studied ancient rock layers preserved in mountains and deep boreholes around the region. That's how they found out that Campi Flegrei may produce giant eruptions more often than scientists previously believed. That doesn't mean a catastrophic eruption will happen anytime soon, but it does change how researchers see the long-term danger. When these eruptions occur, they don't behave as ordinary lava flows. They generate pyroclastic flows, and those are fast-moving avalanches of hot gas, ash, and rock that race across the ground at highway speeds. Some ancient deposits from that eruption, more than 100,000 years ago, reach more than 6 feet thick in certain places, which proves just how violent the bang was. When you connect all these discoveries together, you once again see that our planet doesn't just sit quietly beneath our feet. It moves, breathes, and occasionally reminds us who really runs the place. And most of the time, the biggest forces shaping our world hide thousands of miles below where we stand. Around our planet, there's an invisible magnetic shield that blocks solar radiation. But it isn't spread evenly. One patch is thinner and it has a name: the South Atlantic Anomaly. On the ground, we're fine. Up in orbit, satellites get glitchy as they fly through charged particle storms. And lately, that weak spot looks like it's changing shape. It's spreading out, and some maps even show it splitting into two. So why is that happening and what does it mean? Well, to understand the weak spot, we have to go deep below to the core of the issue and the planet. Around 1,800 miles down, Earth's outer core is a boiling ocean of molten iron and nickel. There, the temperature can rise to more than 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. As that liquid metal moves, it generates electric currents, and those currents create our magnetic field. Now, without the field, the sun's charged particles would slam straight into our atmosphere and start stripping it away. But this magnetic field isn't a smooth, perfect bubble. It's lopsided and tilted. It's constantly shifting. Beneath Africa, some magnetic lines bend the wrong way, back toward Earth instead of out into space. Scientists call these reverse flux patches, and they weaken the field above them. Right over that weak spot is the SAA, the South Atlantic Anomaly I mentioned earlier, and it's changing fast enough that we can watch it shift over just a decade. Scientists know this because of an ESA mission called SWARM. It's 3 satellites constantly, swarming, and mapping Earth's magnetic field in detail. Their maps show that the anomaly has been spreading since the mid-2010s. It's getting weaker and starting to look like it's splitting in two. Now, back down here, we're protected by the atmosphere, but we are still affected indirectly if satellites start acting weird. Most of the satellites we rely on are in low Earth orbit, a few hundred miles up. Over the SAA, the radiation belts droop closer to Earth than usual, so when a satellite passes through, it's like driving through a stretch of space that's far more charged than normal. A single burst of particles can flip tiny bits inside a computer chip. It can corrupt a sensor for a moment or trigger a reset. It can force the satellite into safe mode, where it shuts down anything sensitive to survive. Many satellites cross the SAA multiple times a day, which means each pass is another roll of the dice. Even Hubble has to respect it. Hubble is one of the most famous space telescopes that's been taking those insanely sharp pictures of galaxies, nebula, and weird deep space stuff for decades. But when it's about to fly through the South Atlantic anomaly, it basically goes, no. It stops certain observations and shuts down its most sensitive detectors until it's in the clear again. The satellite is too valuable, and it's not worth taking chances and losing it. Which is exactly what happened to a high-tech Japanese satellite. In 2016, Japan launched Hitomi, a next-gen X-ray space telescope built to study the hottest and craziest objects in the universe, stuff like exploding stars and monster black holes. It was supposed to run for years. Instead, a problem that showed up when it was passing through the SAA kicked off a cascade of attitude control failures. The spacecraft ended up spinning, breaking apart, and the whole mission was lost just weeks after launch. That's not a glitch. That's a multi-year science plan worth billions of dollars lost in just a month. So why does SAA seem to be growing, and why would it split into two? Deep under Africa, Earth's core is like a giant pot of liquid metal. The swirls can change shape over time. Imagine you're holding a strong magnet under a table, and on top of the table there's a thin metal sheet. If you slide the magnet around underneath, the metal above shifts too. If you use one magnet, you get one dent. If you move it or add another magnet nearby, the dent stretches or splits into two. The moving liquid iron deep below acts like shifting magnets. When the flow pattern changes, it creates weak spots in the magnetic field. If one weak spot spreads underground, the dip above it spreads too. If two weak spots form close to each other, that single sag at the surface can split into two dents right next to each other. And that's where this stops being cool Earth science and starts being a problem. Because if the magnetic field can rearrange itself that much in a decade, well, anything we rely on in orbit has to deal with it. But is the South Atlantic anomaly just one local weak spot we have to work around? Or could it be an early hint of something much bigger, like a pole reversal? You see, Earth's magnetic poles are not locked in place forever. North and South have swapped many times before. Magnetic North can drift, weaken, and eventually trade places with magnetic South. Wait, what does that actually mean? Well, it means those football fans who are gathering in the North Stand now have to start cheering from across. But, jokes aside, the planet is not flipping around or becoming the upside-down world. The liquid iron shifts its flow pattern, and the whole magnetic layout reshuffles. Just like every other natural process, it doesn't happen all of a sudden. The field can weaken first, it can break into uneven patches, it can look messy for a while before it settles again. That problematic stage is what would matter most for satellites. Because we know this happened before. When hot lava cools into rock, tiny bits of metal inside line up with Earth's magnetic field and get stuck pointing that same way. Much later, scientists can read that direction like a compass arrow trapped in stone. One famous case is the Lachamps event about 41,000 years ago. Hey, I wasn't around then. But for a while, Earth's magnetic field got much weaker. Then it partly flipped, and then it bounced back. The simplest idea is that the liquid iron deep inside Earth started flowing in a different, unpredictable way for a while. So the magnetic field got scrambled. A pole reversal is the biggest version of this scramble. The South Atlantic anomaly is a smaller, local version. Both happen because the liquid iron flow deep inside can change. The SAA does not mean a reversal is definitely coming. It just shows the magnetic field can get uneven when the stuff underneath shifts. While the anomaly is changing, there's another space problem that can hit way beyond that one spot in the Atlantic: geomagnetic storms. The Sun sometimes launches a huge cloud of superhot gas with its own magnetic field. It's called a coronal mass ejection, or CME. Some of these clouds race outward at over 1,000,000 miles per hour. If one of them is aimed at Earth, it slams into our magnetic shield and shakes it. That shaking dumps extra energy into the space around Earth. It scrambles radio signals, messes with GPS accuracy for a while, and, in extreme cases, even pushes electric currents into long power lines on the ground. Oh, and they also cause breathtaking auroras. Back in March 1989, a major geomagnetic storm triggered a Quebec blackout that left 6 million people in the dark for hours. Another example was in May 2024, when a strong geomagnetic storm disrupted certain satellite and radio signals, forced some airlines to adjust routes, and pushed auroras much farther south than usual. Solar storms don't hit at the same strength all the time. The sun goes through an activity cycle that lasts about 11 years. During the busiest phase, it fires off more flares and more giant clouds of charged particles, so strong geomagnetic storms become more likely. Right now, we're in one of those busier stretches. So the odds of rough space weather are higher than they were a few years ago. But the bigger reason it feels scarier is how modern life works. We lean on satellites and power grids more than ever. So a storm that used to be a cool aurora night can now mean signal glitches, GPS hiccups, rerouted flights, grid strain, and a lot of expensive fixing.